Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Pick a Side podcast. My name is Moran and I'm here with Riv and Andrew Velez, and this is now episode 98. Today is a very special show. We are joined by Chltwn32, but some of you may know him as OG on TikTok, and we're glad to have him on. He's amassed over 200,000 followers on TikTok in a short amount of time, which is why in this episode we will talk about how we got started on TikTok, and we'll also go over the NBA Finals, give our predictions, give our take on the best team to never win a championship, debating how big a factor playoff performance should play when determining the overall value of a player, Kobe versus Tim Duncan all time, and more. So this is now episode 98. If you guys are listening, you guys can rate and review our podcast on Apple Podcasts. And now, on to you, OG. Thank you for being on the show.
No problem, man. Thanks for having me. This is awesome. Thanks for having me.
Let's do it.
So the first question I want to ask, we were talking for about 20 minutes before Riv over here came because he got stuck in the flooding that's going on in Jersey, is how did you first get started on TikTok? Because you came out of nowhere, and just to let you know, I first saw your video when you had about like 24,000 followers. I followed you and I'm like, wow. I look up like 2 days later and you're like at 100,000. I mean, how did that feel once you got that far?
Well, it's interesting, man, because I got involved with this TikTok thing. My best friend, Roderick, he was visiting his kids and he comes back and tells me about it. And I'm thinking TikTok, because I don't do social media very much, but he was like, yo, you need to go check this out. This is a big deal. My kids got me on it and I'm hooked. Well, I get on it and I start watching things. And then I find the basketball community. And there's this guy that was on there. I haven't seen him in quite a while. Boom, I think his name is.
The MJ guy versus LeBron guy, yeah.
Yeah, that's him. Well, he had a take where he talked about Michael Jordan had help in the 80s when he had Orlando Woolridge. And I'm thinking, wait, what?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. I was around during that time. So hang on for a second. No, he did not. And I went off on what Jordan had. You know, they were 18 games under 500 when Jordan sat out most of that season. They're Oklahoma City today. That's who they would be. And he was talking about them. And then it just materialized from that, where I would get questions, yo, who do you think, what do you think of this guy? And what do you think of that guy? And then I started answering questions. And the next thing I know, I'm on TikTok and I got a following, and it just mushroomed from there.
You know what's so interesting about your journey is that so many people that are on TikTok right now follow pages that promote growth tips, and their pages are literally made out to show other people how to grow on TikTok. And you grew in the most unconventional way. No hashtags, just responding to comments. And it was so organic, no growth tips. And to me, I look at that, I'm like, wow, that's so awesome. It really is awesome.
Well, when you think about how you get to know people, how do you get to know people? You get to know people by talking to people.
No doubt.
And then they start talking to other people about you. And again, I'm not a marketing expert. I'm not on that page, but that's just the way I thought to talk to people. I didn't think that this was going to turn into something big. It was just me, just like you guys, talking basketball. And then the next thing I know, this is turned into something huge.
Yeah, exactly. And how was the learning curve trying to learn how to post on the app?
Oh man, again, I am more of an OG. So it was and I'm still learning as I go. So, I had to figure out how to stitch. I had to figure out how to duet, and I had to figure out all of these things as I was going. And you know, my niece, she calls me and she's like, "Uncle Joe, what are you doing with this?" I'm like, "Listen, I don't know what I'm doing here. So can you show me how to do this right here? Can you show me how this works?" And she's 11, so she's like, "You do this and you do that." Next thing I know, I'm stitching and I'm duetting, and I'm still learning as I go, but it's been great.
Just to let you know, the way to get people to be able to stitch your videos, before you go and post your video, there's going to be an option that says allow stitch on yours. Since, I've been on your page, you can't, stitch your videos. That is like gray. You just press that button and then it turns green. That's how you allow people to stitch your video.
Ah.
I know that you've been like trying to learn how to do that. So
right?
yeah, that's how you do
I
it.
have been.
Yes.
Now I know. Okay, we're in business.
So you used to play basketball too, and just for the people out there, your name is Jermaine Womack, because I actually listened to you as a guest on another podcast, and that's how I found that out. And you used to play basketball. You played high school, you played in college, and you played in overseas in Ireland. So tell me about your playing days.
Well, I'm born and raised in Jersey City, so I'm from Jersey. I went to St. Anthony High School.
Oh, that's a basketball school too, traditionally.
I went to St. Anthony High School. My senior year, we finished number 2 in the country. Yeah, we finished number 2 in the country. From there, I went on and played junior college basketball up in Vermont at a place called Champlain College. I played 2 years there. We finished number 8 in the country in the 2 years that I was there. We lost to go to the Final Four. I did well up there, and then from there I went on and played 2 years at Utah State. We ended up winning the regular season championship my junior year in '95, and then from there I played in Ireland. I played a little bit in Belgium, and I played in Greece.
What was your position?
Played 2 guard.
Okay.
Yep.
And how tall are you? 6'4", 6'5"?
Flat foot, 6'3", with shoes on, about 6'4.25".
For those that are out there, a NBA player right now went to St. Anthony's, Kyle Anderson, slow-mo. He went there as well. He was really good. He was one of the top recruits.
Was your coach Hurley at the time, or he wasn't there yet?
That was him. Yes, sir.
Wow.
Coach Buck Hurley.
Wow,
my senior year, I was on the team. My senior year, I was with the UConn head basketball coach, Danny Hurley. We were on the team.
Wow.
Wow.
That's awesome.
That's crazy.
And that's a long way. And Hurley just retired, I believe, right?
Yeah, I think because the school closed down, if I'm not mistaken.
The school did close down?
I think so,
It
yeah.
did.
Wow, that's
my,
crazy.
My brother was going there.
Okay, sweet.
No, not for like basketball.
Oh, okay. Just going there just because?
Academics.
All right, sweet. Hey, that's just as good.
And who are your favorite NFL and NBA teams?
I believe 49 Red.
That's
And
tough.
I don't have an NBA team particularly because these guys move around so much.
I
But
respect
when
that.
I was a kid, I was a big-time Philadelphia 76er fan because they had Doc and they had Moses. So I was a big Philly fan. And then, like I said, the guys started moving around and I couldn't really pick a team. But I was a huge Knicks. My uncle turned me on to the New York Knicks as I got older, but I haven't been to a Knicks game. This is actually interesting. I'm in the 7th grade, and my uncle comes to get me, takes me to a preseason game. New York Knicks just got Patrick Ewing. So I'm super excited going to watch Ewing. They play against the Indiana Pacers. Ewing gets in a fight and gets thrown out of the game.
No way.
I haven't been to a Knicks game since.
You were always scared you weren't going to be able to see the star player.
I haven't been to a Knicks game since.
That's crazy. So who's your favorite players in the NBA right now? If you can't pick a team.
I'm a huge James fan.
LeBron James or James
Yes.
Harden?
The real King James.
I was so confused.
The real King James.
You know what,
I got
man?
you, OG.
I get so confused sometimes because I keep forgetting that he's LeBron. That's what I keep calling him James because that's his last name.
James
but,
is James Harden.
Right. And James is James Harden. Right.
It is
So
cat.
LeBron,
No, it is.
Cat.
It is.
No, it's not. Come on.
So LeBron's my guy. LeBron's my favorite, but I'm a huge Leonard fan. Kawhi fan.
Cool.
I dig what Luka's doing. Tatum, I dig him.
Definitely.
What's
your opinion on Giannis?
Embiid. I dig Embiid. He's awesome. Giannis is also awesome. I dig him.
He looks like an Embiid guy.
Dame is one of my favorites in terms of backcourt players. And Irv.
Haven't heard Steph yet, OG.
He said Irv.
I was getting to that.
Okay.
I was getting to
Okay.
it.
On our last podcast, we had this debate about Giannis and how much his legacy would get a boost if he were to win a championship along with Finals MVP. But we had trouble trying to think about what position do we list him at. Is it small forward? Is it power forward? Is it center? We landed on power forward. Would you agree with that position for him?
Yeah, I think he's an upgraded version of the power forward because of his ability to defend and his ability to rebound and his ability to do the dirty work. Because a lot of 3 men don't do that. That is the primary role of the power forward, and Giannis does that.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Even though the way he gets up and down the floor and the way he handles the basketball, particularly in transition, doesn't make him look like the traditional 4-man.
Yep.
But I would rate him as a power forward, absolutely.
And now transitioning to the NBA Finals, the Suns took game 1. The Bucks were really good from 3 that game. They shot 44%, but Giannis, he was still injured, even though he did his thing. I had this prediction before the series that I do think the Phoenix Suns will win the NBA championship because I think they have the personnel to guard Giannis. I think Monty Williams is a genius offensive head coach, and I think he's a better coach than Budenholzer. And when you have evenly matched teams and you got that coaching edge, I think that team wins. And I was impressed. Game 1 was really impressive. They won by 13 points. And
the game,
I'm having,
sorry to interrupt you, but the game wasn't, if anybody watched it, or they only saw the box score, the game, that 13 points, it was way worse than that. So don't let that fool you. I don't think that Milwaukee ever really, especially when in the second half, they ever really had a shot.
Yeah.
When they called that, when Phoenix called that timeout, when Milwaukee cut it to 9, that was just to regroup the troops. I didn't think that Phoenix had lost control or were losing control of the game. No, they were still in very much control of that game. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I hope that the Suns do it because one of my favorite players of all time is Chris Paul, but we had this debate that we think Giannis would benefit more from the championship than Chris Paul in terms of resume and legacy-wise because it would just jump him over. So I want to start with this question. If the Bucks do win and Giannis does get that championship along with Finals MVP, do you think he goes into that, he enters that top 5 power forward of all time conversation?
Not yet. Nah, he's still got work to do. He's getting there. But having a championship does wonders for his career. Absolutely. But if he quit today, I don't think that he would be in the top 5 of power forwards all time. No. Even though he's got 2 league MVPs and the defensive player of the year, he's still got a lot more work to do.
He needs to get all-stars.
Tell me 5 in front of him. If he hypothetically, let's say he wins the chip, he gets the Finals MVP, what would still be the 5 in front of him?
Duncan.
Obviously,
Malone, yeah. KG, Barkley, Dirk.
You have Barkley. You have KG over Barkley.
I do have KG over Barkley. Yes, sir.
I would have him over Barkley too. Yeah.
He was a better defender than Charles, and he was a better defensive player than Charles.
Yep.
So you don't think Giannis, like if you're just let's go off who's the better player. Do you think Barkley is the better player than Giannis, or you just think
I do
for right now he just has a better resume?
That's all. He just got a better resume. That's all.
Okay.
And I think that Giannis plays on both, even though that doesn't diminish what Charles was, because Charles was incredible. I think he's one of 5 players or 4 players in NBA history with 20,000 points and 10,000 boards. So there are not a lot of guys who have done that. So Giannis still has more work to do. I don't know if Charles is a better overall player than Giannis, but when his time was, he was awesome. And I do think if Giannis continues if he wins a championship and he continues to do what he's doing, I think that he can knock Charles out.
So you don't think defensively, being at how dominant Giannis is, it puts him over guys like Dirk and Barkley, maybe not KG because KG was just as good defensively, but you don't think it puts him over the offensive power forwards? Not
yet. And the reason why I feel like that is because as of right now, this is what it is. We're talking about Dirk Nowitzki, who had a 20-year career. Now, true. I'm not a really big fan of a guy in Dirk Nowitzki who was 7 feet and never averaged double figures, rebounds in the regular season. However, for somebody to do it at that clip for that long, for 20 years, well, we can also say that the last maybe 4 or 5 years was a wash, but like
they were,
for maybe 12, maybe 12 to 15 years.
That's still a long time.
He was one of those guys. But with that being said, I think Giannis has a lot of. He got a lot more work to do. He's getting close though. It's not like it's miles away. I think he's got a lot of work to do. Kind of like what I just mentioned about Steph Curry when we talked about shooters a little while ago, where Ray Allen is the best catch and shoot guy that I've ever seen. Steph Curry off the bounce is the best long ball shooter that I've ever seen, and it's not close. It's Steph, and then it's everybody else, and it's not close. And I know that people want to talk about Dame Lillard and all. It's not close. There's no defense for a guy who can accurately shoot from 30 feet off the bounce. But we could get back to what we just got from the show.
Yeah. So the NBA Finals, I had the Suns in 5. My friend over here, Riv, had the Bucks. Drew also had the Bucks.
Yep.
Who did you have before the series, and are you leaning away from your prediction if you did have the Bucks?
I had the Bucks in 6. I didn't, and that was before Giannis got hurt. Because I saw what they were doing against Atlanta, and I felt like this is the best team that Giannis has ever been on.
No doubt.
And this is his best opportunity. I don't know if he's going to get an opportunity like this with everybody being hobbled and with his team being as healthy as they are. And they're a better defensive team this year than they were last year when he won Defensive Player of the Year. So I'm thinking this is the best opportunity that he has. Now, when he comes back after his knee injury, when I saw him a couple of nights ago, he still looked like he had a lot of bounce in him. And Giannis's game is predicated on flight and athleticism. So if he can be 70, maybe 80% of what he was, I still think that they have a really good shot. The problem that we're having is offensively, I need more of an output from Drew Holiday. We can't have Drew. What we can't have is we can't have Phoenix go 81 from their big three and I get 10 points from my starting 2-guard in Drew Holiday. That's not going to get it done. We don't have a chance. Absolutely not. When Middleton is going 29 and Giannis is going 20 and almost 20 and 20, and then I get 10 points on 1 for 5 from 3. So the problem that we're having with them is we need more of an offensive output from Drew Holiday. In addition to them guys getting on the backboard, Drew Holiday finds himself a lot of times, because this is how Milwaukee plays. They're a team that shoots the long ball. So Drew Holiday falls into that trap where he starts shooting the long ball, even though that's not his game. Mm-hmm. His game is in the mid-range and going to the basket. And he gets himself thrown off because he gets involved in that a lot of times. And if he can get back to his game, I think they got a really good shot.
Yeah, and I think I thought it was absurd for Budenholzer to start Lopez after what he's seen Chris Paul do to Jokic, to Zubac, to Andre Drummond and Marc Gasol, and play drop coverage in the finals. I like that he went and he played small later and had Giannis at the 5. I think that's the Bucks' best shot, switching everything and playing small, because Drew Holiday, he's a great defender, but if he gets screened, there's nothing he can really do. And Budenholzer is a guy who has been known not to adjust. So I hope that he does adjust. I don't know how many minutes Lopez can play in this series. I know he stretches the floor, but I think their best shot is with Giannis at the 5.
Well, let me ask you this question. Why are we switching my 5-man onto my point guard 25 feet away from the basket? Why are we doing that? Chris Paul is not gonna. If we got a pick and pop action with Chris Paul 25 feet away from the basket, they're running that for them to switch. There's no reason to switch. Just go underneath the screen. If Chris Paul cracks that, we'll live with it. We'll absolutely live with that. As opposed to, we're just gonna switch this. Well, now I got my 5-man 27 feet away from the basket. Chris Paul is making a beeline to him. Yeah. Now my rim protector and my defender and my rebounder is gone. He's 25 feet away from the basket. There has to be an adjustment to that.
Yeah, and that's why DeAndre Ayton has been playing so well all playoffs. He's getting these wide open lob attempts, layup attempts. Also, I think we have seen so much growth from Ayton in terms of his aggressiveness. Chris Paul and Monty Williams have really done wonders for his career, but he always had the talent too. And I think in this playoff run and in the finals, he showed just that. He showed why he should have been the number 1 pick and why he was the number 1 pick.
I was a huge Ayton guy when he was coming out of college. I saw potential Olajuwon when I saw him coming out of college. And I mean, he was 18 and 11 last year. The problem was that was just a bad team. And I don't know what they were doing with him offensively. And it looked like Chris Paul kind of he put that battery in his back to tell him that this is what I need you to do, and I'm with you. And he's been doing that. So as a young player who, at this stage of his career in year 3, I mean, he's still trying to prove that he could stick. He's not one of those guys who's an 8-year vet that's been to the All-Star game 3 or 4 times. He's still trying to prove that he can stick. So at this stage, this is a guy who, in my opinion, he could definitely be one of the better players in the game.
So the Suns won game 1. Game 2 is tonight. Riv, have you changed your stance on what you think The Bucks are going to do. You still have the Bucks in this series.
Suns won every game one since the first round. I can't change after game one. I got to see after game two, the adjustment game, and then I'll make my decision.
You know that there's a stat out there that says that over the past 4 finals, the first player to score, that team has lost, and Giannis scored the first bucket. So, Drew, you're not changing your stance. You still have the Bucks.
No, I believe that they were going to lose game one regardless, with or without Giannis. The Suns have just looked really dominant in game one. But I'd look for Milwaukee to definitely change things up in game two. They made some adjustments late in game one, and it looked to help them out a little bit. Not too much. Obviously, Chris Paul was just having his way that night, but I look for game two to be a lot different. Look for Giannis to be more involved. Like you mentioned about Jrue Holiday, I mentioned on the last show, as crucial as his offense is, I think this all-world defender that he's supposed to be needs to be more prominent in this series. You can't have Chris Paul having the game of his life. You can't have Devin Booker having an elite scoring night, and you're out there dropping 10 points. You need to do something for me. And I mentioned him being the most important player in this series. And listen, Giannis is probably going to be the best player if the Bucks want to win, but I firmly believe Jrue needs to be the most important player in this series because he has to deal with Paul and he has to deal with Devin Booker.
And he's
now,
the one that has
don't fall into the trap of what Devin Booker did in game one, because that 8 for 21 was not only was it not efficient, he made a lot of tough shots.
Yep.
And a lot of the stuff that he got was in transition. So in the half court, Jrue and Middleton made it really tough on him. So it wasn't like he was getting whatever he wanted. I thought Jrue did a good job of keeping him off balance.
Okay.
I thought Jrue did a good job of keeping the ball away from him. And when he got the ball, it was late in the shot clock a lot of times. So he had to take shots that he wasn't really feeling taken. So don't let that 27 points and that 8 for 21 fool you. I thought he did a good job on him. Now, the question is what are we going to adjust to? Because, again, Book went 1 for 8 on the long ball. I don't got him taking 8 threes again. Not tonight, I don't. Because if he's taking 8 threes and going, I don't know, 2 for 10, if you got 8 and going 20 and 20, I mean, this series, they're going to be quick work.
And one thing I've seen from Jrue Holiday, he has trouble on the pick and roll defense. We saw it against Atlanta. They were screening him to death, and Trey was just getting his way. We've seen Chris Paul do the same thing in game one. At what point do you just think that you got to fight over the screen, try and save Brook Lopez, try and save Giannis from having to go, like you mentioned, 25 feet from the basket? You don't need that. What do you think Jrue Holiday's got to do there?
They don't teach pick and roll defense in the pros.
True. Definitely
don't. They don't teach how to. If you notice, and I remember this when LeBron had to deal with Kevin Durant in the finals, where they were running switches, where Kevin Durant ended up getting switched on to Kevin Love.
And that's barbecue chicken.
Instead of, and it wasn't like it was a screen where LeBron was getting screened and somebody was diving to the basket. It was just to get Kevin Love onto him. It's very simple in the aspect that all you have to do is just get around the screen. If he shoots that, if you go under it and he shoots that, we'll live with that.
No doubt.
We'll live with the long ball. Now, it sounds a lot easier than it looks.
Correct.
But that's something that should be done. And what Jrue can do, because I think Jrue Holiday is an elite defender, what he can do is get around screens, fight around screens. Brook Lopez is an all-league defender. Talk to each other. Not so much as hedge, because when, again, you that far away from the basket, what am I chasing you away from? He's 22 feet away from the basket. Why am I chasing him away? Is he going to shoot from out there? All right. If he shoots from out there, we'll live with that. You're going to have to give up something. And whatever it is that you give up, especially from out there, we'll live with that.
Yeah, Jrue Holiday has to do what Pat Bev did against D Book in the Western Conference Finals, where he was fighting over every screen. But where I do push back a little bit is that I don't know if going under is the answer, because Chris Paul is shown to take that 3 and hit it like at a consistent rate.
Keep hitting it. We'll live with that.
That's a fact.
Keep hitting it. Chris Paul is 35% for his career shooting the long ball. Keep shooting it. That's what I'll live with. I'll live with that. It's kind of like Giannis. It's kind of like Giannis in transition. If I can stop Giannis and I can get him to shoot the mid-range, I'll live with that. I'll live with that all night long. If I can get Giannis to shoot threes, I'll live with that. If I can get Chris Paul behind the long ball line shooting 6, 7, 8 long balls, absolutely I'll live with that. Because now what that is for us, that's long rebounds, and that's them in transition defense, which can create fouls for us. So I'll live with that. Absolutely.
So, OG, what's your prediction for tonight, and do you still have the Bucks winning the series?
Well, I think that Phoenix could win this game. I think the Bucks could win it too, but I want to see how Giannis comes out, because him with his game, everything they do is predicated on him. I mean, he's their best defensive player. He's their best rebounder. He's their best scorer. He's everything to them. So if he's coming out with the bounce that he has, then I give them a great chance. What I don't like is I don't like them not putting enough pressure on Ayton. If they can put more pressure on Ayton to play defensively, I think they got a great shot to win tonight. I have a great shot to win.
I had a question for you, OG. I know we was talking about this a couple of weeks ago. You know, these young players balling out in this year's playoffs, Donovan Mitchell, Luka, Devin Booker. For this ring, would this put Devin Booker in the superstar conversation going forward, or do you think he still needs to prove himself more, being that this is his first playoff run? He's 26 years old, and Chris Paul was technically the leader for this squad.
Well, I think that all rings count. I'm not one of these people who falls into the narrative that, well, you got to do it by yourself. Devin Booker, he hasn't been very efficient in these playoffs. This is his first time coming. This is his first time ever being in the playoffs. So he hasn't been very efficient, but that doesn't negate the fact that I was the starting two guard on a NBA championship team.
Right.
And that puts him above guys, not just who haven't, that puts him above guys who are level to him because he's done that. Now, can he sustain that is the $1 million question. And once if he becomes a champion, can he sustain that? Because what can't happen, my man, is he can't win the NBA championship this year and then we never hear from him again.
I don't think that'll happen.
I mean, I
don't think that'll happen either.
Yeah, it's about Devin Booker. It's about Devin Booker adding layers to his game. He now has to become a better defender, because in these playoffs he hasn't really been a good defender either. He hasn't been a good defender for his entire career.
I've seen the attempts, though. He's tried on defense.
He has, but I know that there's this growing narrative that people want to start comparing him to Kobe. But Kobe was an all-world player at 21 years old.
Yeah.
And he was an all-world defender throughout his entire career. They only compare Kobe and Devin Booker because Devin Booker makes tough mid-range shots. But in all actuality, as players, D-Book is not close. He really isn't close.
Just because Kobe has the edge defensively 100%.
I think that people compare them because of the skill set on offense and the way they get their shots. You know, Devin Booker loves the mid-range game. Kobe was like this. So I can see the similarities. I don't think they're the same player because Kobe was a two-way demon.
Yep.
But I think the similarities are there on offense alone, just offense.
You actually comparing them because you saw Kobe talking to him. You had no comparison with him and Book last year or when Kobe Bryant was around. None of us was looking at Book going, that's the next Kobe Bryant right there.
I don't know.
We saw him talking to Kobe Bryant. Next thing we know, you know what? Maybe he could be as good as Kobe. No,
I'm not saying
it was Klay Thompson at first. That was his first comparison coming into the pros. Right. It was Klay Thompson.
I'm not saying he's Kobe, OG. I'm just saying he is one of the best scorers in the league we have right now. And so it's understandable that you look at Kobe, who's obviously one of the best scorers of all time, and you see a guy like Devin Booker, who early in his career dropped 72 points on a Celtics team that
he lost.
He did lose, but MJ lost, dropping 63 in the playoffs.
That's a playoff game.
Don't do that.
He still drops. That's the playoff record, 63, and he lost.
But he did win when he dropped 69 on Cleveland, though.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
But regardless of the fact, that Suns team was still bad. He was still the guy. My point being, now he's got a good team. He's still being efficient. And he's still getting the buckets, still getting the points. Not as efficient as of recent. I feel like this Clipper series is where I've seen the numbers take a dip, definitely. The first two games of that Clipper series, he was definitely, I felt as if he was more efficient than he was in games 3, 4, 5, and 6. But even still, I feel like, you average 25 plus, and your team is still winning games with relatively ease, you still got to give him his respect there.
I thought Pat Beverly did a really good job.
No doubt. Definitely.
I thought he did a really good job of making it difficult on him, because you're not going to stop a guy, especially at that level. You can possibly make it difficult on him and maybe slow him down, but I don't think you're going to stop a guy at that level.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call Devin Booker a superstar. I think he's trending that way, but I don't know if I could call him a superstar. Here's $1 million question for all of you guys. These are three players I just thought of randomly right now. Devin Booker versus Bradley Beal and Trae Young. Who's the best one out of all those three?
Trae Young.
I'm going to go Trae Young because he can do more.
Okay.
Trae.
You two OG? Okay. Now here's the second question. As a scorer, who's better, Bradley Beal or Devin Booker?
I think Bradley Beal is a better scorer.
That's tough.
It is tough. It is tough.
I'm gonna lean D Book because I feel like the ability to make tougher shots. I lean D Book in that sense. I feel like it's a shame that he's kind of dipped off with his efficiency these last few games because he's been killing. Other than that, he killed Denver. He killed LA. That's really tough, but I think I lean Booker just because his ability to make tough shots. Yeah, and that's a tough question.
And they're around the same age too.
I feel like, I've seen Devin Booker in the playoffs, and I feel like the old Bradley Beal in the playoffs is not the guy we have right now.
No doubt.
Like, he's a completely different player than what he was. But I think, leading the league in scoring and scoring another 30 in the next year, I think we have to put that in consideration.
He never led the league in scoring.
Oh, he was just
this past season it was Steph. Last year it was James Harden.
Oh, he was just up there. Okay,
he was second each year though.
So being the second, being the second leading scorer in the league, I think I got to go Brad Beal.
Go Brad Beal.
Yeah.
Okay,
it's close though.
I think it is close because they both have similar games. They're not extremely efficient from three. They're both great mid-range scorers.
Not great
defenders. I think Bradley Beal is way more athletic than D Book though.
Yeah,
like Bradley Beal has that explosiveness. Man, it is tough though. It is really tough. It is tough. So, on to the next topic.
Hold on. Before we get off this topic of Devin Booker. OG, I got a question for you. Devin Booker or Donovan Mitchell?
That's simple for me. I think it's Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah, it is.
Thank
yeah,
you.
Yeah.
That's simple for me. Donovan he's dynamic, man. He's a better athlete than Book.
Yep.
That hurts you.
No, it doesn't. I mean, listen, Donovan's amazing, and it's a shame that he got hurt because probably his team probably would have won the series.
You really want to do that?
I think
I'm saying Donovan would have won if they were healthy.
I think they still lose because they were trapping Donovan. I think if Mike Conley was healthy, they would have won though.
Fair enough.
He was the difference in that
That's
series.
true. Very true.
He's their primary ball handler.
And the way the Clippers adjusted to Gobert's game
even on
also.
a bad ankle, Donovan had like 39.
He was, but he was definitely inefficient in the series. He's amazing for sure.
Yeah. I actually want to talk about that because we're on the subject of that Utah Jazz series, and I think this is a perfect segue to this topic. Not the best team to ever not win a championship, but this other one. In the playoffs, each year we see players have fantastic playoff performances. Last year in the bubble, it was Tyler Hero. He was getting hyped up as the next big thing. And then we see players play bad in the playoffs, and all of a sudden, everybody diminishes their value. That's happening right now with Ben Simmons. That's happening with Kristaps Porzingis. It happened with Paul George. Now, all of a sudden, Jimmy Butler isn't on Paul George's level because he had a bad playoff series. And it also happened with Rudy Gobert. And because Quinn Snyder just made a bad coaching decision that exposed Gobert, people now pin the entire blame on Gobert and think he's this liability on defense. But, OG, I saw you make a video. When Gobert is off the floor, the Jazz are one of the worst defenses in the league. When he's on it,
27th. Yep. What are they? Third. They're third from last. When he's off the floor, third from last. When he's on the floor,
like
three.
Okay,
they're third. Wow. So they're one of the best defenses when he's on the floor. But because the playoffs happen, people totally forget their value. So let's start with the hot topic first. Let's start with Ben Simmons. What is Ben Simmons' value now after we've seen what he's done in the playoffs? Drew, I know you're a huge Ben Simmons lover, so I want to see you go first.
I just think that because he's not as aggressive as a scorer, people like to insinuate that he's not this all-world ball player. Now, when you impact the game in other ways, that still means something to me. I understand he's not the ball scorer, but when you're the point guard, you don't necessarily have to be that primary ball scorer, especially when you're on a team where you have Embiid, who is a 30-point per game scorer. You have Tobias Harris, who is a 20-plus point per game scorer. You have Seth Curry, who is an amazing three-point shooter right now in our league. He can do his job of facilitating the offense. He can run the pick and roll with Joel Embiid. He can be the best, arguably the best defender in the league, next to Gobert, next to Anthony Davis, next to Giannis Antetokounmpo. He does things more. He does a lot of other things other than score the basketball. Listen, if he scored the basketball, he would be a top 10 player in this league, no doubt, because he has so many. If he could score the basketball, Riv, come on.
Whoa. You fighting that?
Exactly.
Yeah,
He
could.
If he could shoot, he would be LeBron James.
Well, no, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know about that.
He
I don't know
has-
about that.
he I'm not saying he would be LeBron. Listen, OG, I got LeBron's my favorite player ever. I'm saying the fact that he has size, he has the speed, the athleticism, the ability to play defense 1 through 5. You guys like to fight me on that, but I'm a stand by that. He definitely could. Rebounding, passing.
I think
what
he's a
can't
little-
he do
I think
except
he's-
score the basketball?
Not LeBron. I think a little worse Giannis. If he had a okay jump shot.
I just think that that Ben's a way better passer. That's why I feel like Giannis. It's not disrespect to call him Giannis. Obviously, Giannis is one of the best ball players
If we're
we have
being
in our
honest,
league.
Ben Simmons right now, he should be a 23, 8, and 8 guy.
I'm with you.
That's just the bottom line. He shouldn't be that 14-point per game scorer he is right now.
Because the fact that Giannis is still averaging 28 points per game and he doesn't have a jump shot, it's Ben Simmons should be doing that exact same thing. He's just not as aggressive. I'm glad I got OG defending me. OG came in. He's like, "Come on, don't disrespect
you said
Ben."
a couple things that just kind of like I was just like, wow, I was a little surprised.
Let's hear it then.
Because
We all ears.
yeah, because Ben Simmons, the type of player he is, like just him. I feel like, you say he can be on the same defensive level as Anthony Davis, Giannis. I don't think so. I think his defense is a little bit overrated. I don't think he can guard 1 through 5 like Anthony Davis or Giannis. Anthony Davis and Giannis are more prone to
You
guard
think
bigs.
Anthony Davis could guard Trae Young?
No, I don't think he can guard guards, but I think they're more prone to guard bigs, which Ben Simmons can't. Ben Simmons can't guard Trae Young either. He can't
I'm
guard a
with
lot
you.
of point
I'm
guards
with
who are
you.
too quick.
But
for him
not
either.
many people can guard Trae Young right now.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying. Neither one can guard guards, but I don't think Ben can guard bigs. As
Okay.
if opposed Anthony Davis and Giannis can guard bigs. And I think with Ben Simmons, you saying he can be more aggressive. Yeah, he may be more aggressive, but his jump shot is still not good in a league like this. I'm not gonna say you. No, I'm gonna say it. You kind of need a jump shot to be a top 10. Aside from Giannis, most guys in the top 10 have a jump shot, whether it be a mid-range or 3-ball or both. So I can't sit here and say Ben Simmons is gonna just jump into the top 10 because he's just gonna be more aggressive. I want him to be more aggressive. That would definitely.
I said if he could shoot, he could be top 10.
But also,
I
what
said if
type?
he could
What
shoot.
what like when you say shoot? What do we mean? Do we mean
He don't shoot anything.
I'm with you.
No,
he used
this-
to,
this
and that's
the-
when he used to get buckets. Then something happened to his mental, and he just
This
decided,
is a
I'm not going to
specific
do it
question,
anymore.
though. Are we talking about shooting 30% from the 3, which is what Giannis is shooting? Are we talking about shooting average, which is 35%? What type of shot?
I just need him to start taking attempts. The fact that he's not letting any go is mind-boggling, truthfully.
I think his value
Well,
is
first
still
of all,
high.
first of all, the game before game, I think it was game 6. Ben Simmons did hold Trae Young to 38% from the floor. So I want to start there. Now, Ben Simmons reminds me of that guy that's in his head because Ben works on his game. Ben's not just this guy who's showing up. He works on his game. I'm sure of that. But he's one of those guys who, if it's not working right from the beginning, he goes away from it. And he goes right back to what he's used to doing. Mike Tyson said it. Everybody got a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yep.
So Ben Simmons goes right back to what he's used to doing. If Ben could put a mid-range in his game and trust it, I think he would be unguardable.
No doubt about that.
Just strictly off the fact of how he can create shots for other people and how he can get to the basket. I mean, he did have 13 assists in Game 7.
Yes, sir.
We can't take that off
And
the
a lot
board.
of his guys,
I
missed wide open shots in that game
say he
too.
wasn't a
He
really
did have
good
13
playmaker.
assists in that game. And not to mention, Ben, how many guys in the NBA, this is Ben's, 4th year? How
He's
many
24.
two-time All-Stars and three-time All-League defenders do we have at this age? And you just want to hand them over?
Exactly.
And I think
I'm glad.
good on it.
I'm so glad you brought that up. Hand him over. That's a key word right there because there was this trade recently that was on Twitter that started to trend that Philadelphia rejected Ben Simmons for Malcolm Brogdon in the first round pick. And everybody was like, why would Philly reject that trade? And I'm over here thinking, why would they accept it?
Makes no
that's
sense.
that's the last resort. That's the worst possible scenario. One, because Ben Simmons is a better player than Malcolm
That made me
Brogdon.
cringe.
He's a better player than Malcolm Brogdon. Maybe Malcolm Brogdon can fit better next to Embiid, but Simmons is a better player.
He's also younger,
he has
too.
more potential. Exactly.
True.
Not only that, but if Philly really does want to trade Ben Simmons, they have to get a star player. And in any trade package for maybe a Dame, for a Bradley Beal, for one of these top stars, Ben Simmons has to be involved. So why would you sell yourself short if you're Philly and just accept Malcolm Brogdon? It makes no sense.
Well, because it's a knee-jerk reaction because Ben wouldn't shoot and Brogdon actually has a mid-range game. Yep. So we figure let's get him and get Ben out of here, and completely disregarding what we're giving up when we get rid of him. Mm-hmm. And it makes no sense whatsoever. I wasn't a fan of that trade. I'm like, no, I'm good. No, I'm straight. Thank you, though.
Yeah, Trae Young would have dropped 40 on Brogdon.
Would he? Dude. Brogdon.
If he did that to Ben, he would have dominated Brogdon. But that's what I feel about Ben Simmons. Like I still like Ben Simmons as a player, but I think he needs a new environment. And if I were a team,
I don't agree.
I do. The reason why I do is that I want a team to actually build around Ben and say, here, you have the keys. We're going to space the floor, play 5 out, and now play kind of like how you envision Magic would have played in today's era. And
that's what Philly does with Embiid. He shoots 40% from the three. It's not like he's parked on a box every game, every trip. No, that's the same thing that Philly does. They play 5 wide all the time.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true, but I would like to see him with more agile players because I think Embiid, he's a phenomenal shooter, but I think he does clog the paint because he can't get out of it as quickly as like a small ball 5.
You take Embiid over a small ball 5 any day.
No, of course, but I'm saying I think for Ben Simmons to reach his ceiling, he needs to be that guy that has the keys to the team.
One thing I will say that I will go off your point. Whenever Embiid misses some time, we see Ben actually be aggressive because he knows he has to be the focal point of the offense when his 30-point per game center is not going to be there. And that's what I'm saying. Exactly. When Embiid doesn't play, they were still winning. They were still the first seed in the East. It's not like Embiid left and they just suddenly forgot how to play basketball. They were still winning. Ben Simmons was still being aggressive. It's when Embiid's there, he defers because Doc has said it that Joel Embiid's their best scorer. And listen, I'm not going to say he isn't their best scorer because he definitely is because he can do it in so many ways. It's just that when he's on the floor, Ben needs to realize I'm good at scoring. I just need to do it.
So can I ask a question? You guys said this is Ben's 4th year, but realistically probably his 5th or 6th year in the NBA because he missed a year.
4. 5 technically.
5. Okay. He's 24 years old. Like you said, he's
freshman in college too, so give him some time.
He's 24 years old. He's been a 2-time All-Star. He's been on an all-defensive team. I think he's made an All-NBA 3rd team, if I'm not mistaken. What type of coach would put that mindset in his brain to be more aggressive? Like, what does he really need to do? Because this is year 5, and they had a championship window this year. With all those injuries, they played Atlanta. I think we all can agree they should have beat Atlanta.
Definitely.
They were a number 1 seed. So when does he decide, all these young players coming up, Devin Booker, Donovan Mitchell, Luka, like they're starting to get their groove. Trae Young, even John Moran was showing a little something in the playoffs. So when does Ben actually take that next step? Because he has all the tools, the physical tools.
Yep.
He has the IQ. When does it start to click?
So your logic is this it for Ben? The Ben that we see now, is this it for him? Is that your logic?
That's what I'm asking, yes.
Okay, so we're talking about a guy who, how old you said he was, what,
24.
24.
So we still, was he 7? He was 17 and 9 last year. This year he did make I don't think he made the All-Star team.
I think it was last year.
He was 14, 8, and 8 this year.
He was 14, 8, and 8. I think he was almost 17 and 9 last year. So
that was the All-NBA year. All-NBA 3rd team was last year.
Yeah, and with that being said, there is still room for growth with this guy, just like there's room for growth with Booker, just like there's room for growth with Donovan Mitchell.
Yep.
Now, I've always been under the belief that by year 5, whatever we see from this guy, this is what you should expect. And what I mean when I say that is they'll have better seasons, but this is who this guy is. So if we're talking football, for example, by year 5, if Eli Manning is 3,500 yards, this is probably who he is. Now, he might have a 4,000-yard season and another 4,200-yard season, but for the most part, this is who he is. So I'm not expecting Ben Simmons to be 25 and 8 or what's realistic for Ben. I think what's realistic for Ben is 19 and 8.
19, definitely. Definitely.
I think that's realistic where he can sustain that. And I think he can do that in Philly. The problem that we're having is it's upstairs.
Yep, 100%.
He doesn't stick to what he's been working on when it doesn't work. He goes away from it. He's not trusting the work that he put in. And that's where Because I'm sure that this guy is working on his mid-range. I'm sure he's working on his game. We've actually seen that in pickup games on YouTube and Twitter and things like that. We've seen this guy working on his game. So the question is can he trust himself? Now, Ben Simmons has one more season with me. And the reason why I say that is because as my floor leader, I have to be able to trust you mentally.
Right.
And if we have an issue with you mentally, I can't build my team around you because that means that you're unstable, which means my unit is unstable. So I can't build my unit around a guy of instability. So he got one more season with me. He can't come back next season the same guy. Now, if he does, I have to move
I have
on.
a question for you.
Hold on.
It's based off that.
I think we might ask the same question.
Low key. So right now, his trade value is already pretty low. Let's say you wait that one season. I'm saying this as a guy who supports Ben, and I don't believe Philly should trade him. God forbid he doesn't play to what we are expecting him to do next season. His trade value is going to be even less than what it is now, and they're already talking about Malcolm Brogdon being a replacement. Or right now, the best thing that they could go out and do, which is obviously an amazing move, would be go and get a Dame or a CJ McCollum if Dame seems a bit unrealistic. What do you get next season if he's not the guy?
Do you think that it'll be worse than what you saw this season? This dude is giving up layups.
Yeah, no, for sure.
For
sure.
You think it could be worse than
for
that?
sure.
I
Not
doubt
wide
very
open layups on a Trae Young
Dunk the
who's
basketball,
come on.
guy. I
I'm
don't
with
think
you.
It could be worse than that.
I'm with you.
So I'm thinking that we can only go up from here.
No doubt.
Not just him that's why I'm not out just yet.
No, me either.
I think that there is progress for Ben.
100%.
If there wasn't any progress, I would have already been like, this guy is a wash. Let's get rid of him. But I do think there's progress. And I think that where we are now is the lowest point.
100%.
So because this is the lowest point, it has to get better. Now, if he comes back and shows me a similar player next year as this year, then we have to start talking about moving him. And I'm sure his trade value will be higher because it won't be as bad as it is this year.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm on the team that Ben Simmons is what he's going to be, which is what you mentioned, 18, 8, and 8, around there. There are only two players that I trade Ben Simmons for right now if I'm Philly. And there might be a few more, and I just might be slipping on their names, but these are the two. Damian Lillard, obviously one of them. CJ, I wouldn't. The other one is De'Aaron Fox.
Can I ask you a question?
Those are the two.
Would you guys go Ben for Zach?
That's tough, but I probably would because I think Zach is special.
No,
I think Zach is special.
And the reason why I'm good on Zach, is because I already have my perimeter scoring.
Yep.
Harris is great Harris is very good on the perimeter. I got my box work in Embiid. We're not that far away. And on top of that, we live in an age now where, the Lakers of the 80s and the Bulls of the 90s, those teams don't exist anymore. So the idea of building it over years, like the Warriors, those teams don't exist anymore. So we got a short window. So to bring in a guy like Dame or De'Aaron Fox, I already got the pieces. I'm good with what I have. We just got to now do it.
Especially if you trade Ben.
Because we can't keep this unit together too much longer.
What do you think about D'Angelo Russell?
I wouldn't do it because you're losing defense. You trade Ben, you're losing not only defense, you're losing size, you're losing agility.
But I think D'Lo is a bit more realistic than Dame.
Yeah,
I feel like that is too. But do you think that Timberwolves are in a position to trade D'Lo right now?
I don't think they are, and I think they won't because
that keeps Cat in town.
They got D'Lo because he's best friends with Cat.
Yeah, that keeps Cat in town. And they
thought they were going to get Devin Booker before the Suns actually started hooping.
Yeah. So the real question of this topic was, should we discredit what a player does for an entire regular season just based off a playoff series? Because people have done that with Porzingis, Julius Randle. You did it with R.J. Barrett, even though he's 20 years old. OG.
Boy, stinks.
My Riv right here, he's not a believer in R.J. Barrett because of a bad playoff series, even though he's
all right. You're exaggerating.
21 years old.
You're exaggerating. I didn't say
and
I
he's
wasn't.
shown a ton of promise. But regardless, we've seen that with Kristaps Porzingis, Julius Randle, Ben Simmons, Rudy Gobert. So should we just discredit what they do in the regular season if they have a bad playoff series? Because that seems to be what a lot of people are doing right now. And I forgot to mention Paul George and Jimmy Butler as well.
Also Westbrook too.
I don't think we should discredit a full season, but I think we should definitely look at it because when you pay a superstar, you pay him because you want him to lead you to the promised land. So a regular season is great, but in the end, you pay superstars because they're performers in the playoffs, so you want them to perform for your team and you want them to lead you to the NBA championship. Now, I don't think you should disrespect or diminish a player because of one bad playoff run, but I think repeated bad playoff runs.
That's what you did with Ben
Russell
Simmons.
Westbrook is bad repeated.
Yeah, you should
and I'm
definitely
with you.
start talking about it. But I think when you pay a superstar, you pay him to get you to the big dance, and having bad playoff series at the bad playoff series isn't going to help that at all.
Go ahead, OG.
Well, we also got to take under consideration who we're talking about here. Well, we got a guy in R.J. Barrett who's improved every year. And this is the first time he's been to the playoffs.
Yep.
All right? This is the first time he's been to the playoffs. And I think he's going to get better next year. That's first of all. Number two, you have set the standard in what greatness is. You're telling me that in order for me to be great, when do I have to do it?
In the playoffs.
You don't care about Jordan scoring 69 against Cleveland in January.
Nope.
You don't care about Kawhi Leonard going for 46 against San Antonio.
Devin Booker, 72 on the Celtics.
You don't care about that.
Yeah.
You know what you do care about? You care about Jordan knocking down them 6 threes in the finals.
100%.
You care about LeBron in Game 7 of the NBA Finals against Golden State. That's what you care about. Now, that's what you hold in the highest regard. So that's where these guys are rated. Why is Tom Brady rated as high as he is? Why is Joe Montana rated as high as he is? And why isn't Peyton Manning rated higher than he is? 8 one-and-dones in the playoffs.
You didn't have to go there, OG. You didn't have to go there, OG.
I'm sorry.
He's a Peyton Manning fan, by
That
the way.
hurts, OG.
And I know this is a basketball show. Absolutely. Peyton
No,
Manning,
we're both.
The best pure passer that I've ever seen.
I agree.
3-step drop, 5-step drop. There he is. Hit him. He's the best that I've ever seen.
And the smartest,
But
in my
what do we-
opinion.
What do we rate these guys on? We rate these guys on what they do in the postseason.
Yep.
Let's pump the brakes on R.J. Barrett because I think R.J. Barrett is the future
Oh my God!
of the Knicks.
I think so
I
too.
really do.
I think so
OG,
too.
he just had one of a historically bad
No,
playoff.
historically bad is
It was-
such a stretch.
I didn't say
It
that.
was
That's
really
just
bad.
a bad, but not historically.
It was
bad.
really
He
bad.
did have a
No,
bad
it
one, though.
wasn't.
It was a bad first run.
It's like, did he have a
Absolutely.
single good game?
And we don't talk enough about how much pressure it is to play in
Very
Madison
true.
Square
Very
Garden
true.
with that
But you
crowd.
could say the same thing with Trae Young on the road.
No, I agree, but look, Trae Young has different makeup than RJ. And Trae Young is different.
But the way you
My
talk
first
about
year
it,
this is my first trip to the playoffs, and it's my second year out of college.
but
It's
Trae
not like
Young
I've been
pretty
in the
similar.
league 8 years. This is my second year out of college, and it's my first trip to the playoffs.
This
Never
is
done
Trae,
this before.
This is Trae Young's first run at the playoffs, and it's his third year in the playoffs. And
Now,
I want.
not to mention, what's the standard in New York?
It's a high standard. New York is a
100%.
big
No, it's
market.
not. You know why it's not? Because the
they've
last
been
time
trash.
we won the NBA championship was the year I was born.
Yeah.
So no, it's not.
That's
It's
his
a
fair.
high standard.
But I look at it like
but you don't
this.
think the fans ask for a lot, OG? I didn't mean to cut
I'm a
you
Knicks
off.
fan. I'm a Knicks fan. No, we don't. We just want to.
No.
This year, we didn't even think we were going to make the playoffs, bro.
Fair enough.
The
Fair
fact that
enough.
we made the playoffs, we were happy with it.
Fair
That's
enough.
why all this Knicks slander is ridiculous.
I think
I love RJ Barrett.
we know you do.
Yeah, because OG, we get into heated arguments because I said this on a previous show. Unless the Knicks get a commitment from Kawhi Leonard, I'm not trading RJ Barrett for Dame. I don't think a duo of Dame and Randall can go far. I'm not trading RJ and picks for Dame because I think that's Carmelo 2.0, and that we might even have a worse run than that with just Dame and Randall. That's why, but he disagreed. He thought that you trade RJ for Dame because that's Dame, and I said no because Brooklyn is still there, Milwaukee's still there. They're not going to be a top team in the East, so why trade for Dame?
So you were just gonna throw what I said out without any context and just let that be.
Is that not what you said?
I said I feel like you should trade for Dame because in the next big market you can attract a superstar there,
Which
with
is very
Dame, with
valid.
Dame being there. I don't think a combination of RJ and Randall is more appealing than Dame being in New York. That's what I said.
So
You
what
didn't really say that.
attracted Leonard to the Clippers? Because they wasn't exactly rolling to the Western Conference Final
They
before.
gave
and
Golden
Paul
State
George.
that too. He's told them, listen, you need another superstar if you want me to come along.
And he
But
specifically asked for
the
Paul
Clippers gave the Golden State Warriors a pretty good series that first year,
Yes,
so
they did.
they looked
Yes,
pretty
they did.
attractive. That team was pretty solid. The bench, the overall players, everything about that team. I understood why Kawhi would want to go there, but he did need another star. That being said, he's not too far off saying that Dame and Randall is more appealing than RJ And Randall, after you just saw him in the playoffs.
You have to look at the free agent market. You're talking about 2022 offseason. Kawhi is leading in that market. And like KD, Harden, Kyrie, they're not coming into the Knicks because they're already on the Nets. Then you drop off. Like, I don't think a trio of Beal, Dame, and Randall can win. If I'm the Knicks, let's just build our young core. Let's Randall with RJ, quickly Mitch, OB, and our 2 first-round picks we have this season. And hopefully, if it's not at too steep of a price, let's go out and get Lonzo Ball. They're even talking about getting Mike Conley. I just want the Knicks to keep growing with these young players instead of just trading them all away when a Dame trade opportunity comes about. I just don't think that's the way the Knicks should go.
What do you mean at too steep of a price? Because Alonzo Ball is exactly what you need as a floor leader.
$20 million.
He's absolutely what you're looking for. That's number one. Number two, the Knicks are, because the way the landscape is in the NBA today, you can be one player away. None of you guys had Toronto winning the NBA championship when they added Leonard.
No I did too.
I had them going to
they were a bounce away.
You're right.
They were a bounce.
I had them going to the finals, but obviously I didn't have them beating a healthy Golden State.
You can ask JC. I swear to God.
So with that being said, Leonard comes to New York. They go to the top of the Eastern Conference with the group that they currently have, with the rim protectors that they have, with the perimeter defenders that they have. Leonard comes to New York. They go to the top of the Eastern Conference. That includes what Brooklyn has. That includes what Milwaukee has.
That's how
I think the Knicks are one player away.
OG, you know what I'm
pushing on that. I'm pushing on that, OG. I'm pushing on that.
That's egregious.
OG, you know what I think?
You can push on it, absolutely. I think that because Leonard showed me that he can be the difference. He doesn't have to be the best player. He could just be the difference.
And OG,
he showed me that in Toronto.
What about last year? And last year against Denver, where he needed to be the guy, 3-1 up. He had three chances to put him away.
Everybody has
they were leading by double digits in each of those games, and he went ghost in each of those fourth quarters. This is a guy who we've seen.
Okay, and what did he do against Dallas in Game 6? 40 points.
Question:
What did he do against Utah?
Is he supposed to
at
win,
home?
Is he supposed to win that series against Dallas?
Okay, but everybody has a bad moment. Your GOAT LeBron has had bad moments. Steph Curry has had bad moments. Kevin Durant has had bad moments.
He's had one bad moment in 2011.
And everybody's had a bad moment. Kawhi bounced back this year with a phenomenal performance in Dallas.
Very true.
Game 6, and then he bounced off with Utah when he went back-to-back games with 30 points at home. In LA,
but don't you think it speaks
0-2.
volumes that the fact that the Clippers were still able to win that series against the Jazz even after Kawhi went out?
Of course.
If he doesn't get hurt,
they're in the finals.
Where are the Clippers?
In the NBA Finals, OG, and I'm not saying you're wrong there, but the fact that they were still able to compete against the Sun teams that's looking pretty dominant right now. They were still able to compete against them and were able to overcome a 26-point deficit in Utah without the best player. Just shows me that the Clippers are a little bit better than we give them credit for.
OG, I push back a little on the Knicks are a player away because of this reason. Toronto, before they got Kawhi, they were at the top of the East year after year. They traded away DeRozan and Jakob Poeltl for Kawhi, which was a steal. And people forget about this, but they also got Danny Green, who was huge in that championship run as well. They were literally a player away. I mean, when you look at their roster in hindsight, they were stacked. I don't think the Knicks are that. But if the Knicks this offseason can get Kawhi and maybe Kyle Lowry comes at a discount or maybe Mike Conley, now I think we're talking.
Don't leave out the fact that the boogeyman was gone. So that helped.
Yeah, LeBron, yeah.
Mm-hmm. We can't leave that out. That helped. Well, the same thing is going on now in the East. So Durant's going to be back next season, but he's going in year 15. We already seen who James Harden is in the playoffs when he goes deep into the playoffs. We've seen who this guy is.
100%.
We know who he is. Same thing with Irv. We know who Irv is, but can he hold up?
You mean health-wise? Because I'm about to say I've seen Kyrie in the playoffs outshine.
It's health-wise.
That's got to be the only thing he's saying, because I've seen Kyrie in the biggest moments be as high as you could get.
There's no question about Irv's game.
Yep.
Just like there's no question about Chris Paul's game. The question is can he hold up?
Yep.
That's it. Can these guys hold up? So you're talking about a Knick team that they got. I think Tibbs did a great job. He was coach of the year. I think he did a great job with that group. And to get a player like Leonard,
can Kawhi hold up?
Show these guys how to play. I don't think he's leaving the Clippers, but just an idea.
Now, can Kawhi hold up?
Well, that's another question because he's proven this season. I mean, he rolled his ankle in 17. He rolled his ankle, and then this season he got hurt. So
and load management basically ever since that ankle injury. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you want to commit. I mean, obviously it's New York, and fans are going to want to come see Kawhi, but you're probably going to give him around 35, 40 million, no doubt. It's Kawhi Leonard.
You have to.
You gotta give him 40.
And with the opportunity of him taking, what are the chances he's going to play a back-to-back with you? Probably slim.
I think they can get to the playoffs. They just need Kawhi for the playoff moments.
But then can you rely that he's going to be healthy come that time?
You can't rely on anybody's could be healthy if we're being like 100% honest.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point.
But if I'm the Knicks, do I take that chance? Absolutely,
I think so
take
too.
that chance. And I think any team in the NBA, whether it's the Heat, Dallas, the Clippers, the Knicks,
it's
they're
like
all
taking that chance on KD off the torn Achilles. It's a generational type talent.
I'm going to name players, and you guys let me know if you're out or in on them after these bad playoff performances. First one up, Kristaps Porzingis. Are you out or in?
I'm out personally.
I'm in.
Julius Randle, out or in?
I'm still in.
How about you, Drew?
As a number 2, I'm in. As a number 1, I'm out.
I'm in.
Ben Simmons, out or in?
50-50.
I'm in. I have to be.
I'm in too. I'm in.
Okay, and now I'm thinking about another player that had a bad playoffs right now. This one's at the top of my head, Jimmy Butler. I think we should all be in on Jimmy Butler.
I'm in.
You guys are all in on Jimmy Butler still?
Ooh, OG taking a breath.
Oh, man.
I'm in.
You have me scared for a little bit.
I will say I understand where he's coming from because his offensive game is kind of limited. He doesn't love to shoot the three. It's getting to a point where he's kind of a DeMar DeRozan, but more of a playmaker, of course.
DeMar DeRozan.
You guys are going to
more of a playmaker.
You know who Jimmy Butler is? Jimmy Butler is Gerald Wilkins upgraded. That's
DeMar
who Jimmy Butler is.
He's more. Listen, he doesn't really love to take. It's not, listen. We're not talking like DeMar DeRozan, some scrub.
But Jimmy's
but he doesn't have the mindset that Jimmy has or defensively.
On an offensive level.
Jimmy's a better
level
playmaker
with me here. Level
far.
with me here. On an offensive level, scoring the basketball, is he not DeMar DeRozan?
We saw Jimmy Butler score 40 in the finals.
Talking about the playoffs or we talking about the regular season? Because DeMar can score in the regular season.
I'm with you. My point being, his skill set offensively to score the basketball, DeMar DeRozan.
Okay. But offensively as a package, I'll take Jimmy.
I'm with you. I'm definitely listen, Jimmy Butler is better offensively than DeMar DeRozan, but if I'm looking solely at his scoring, it reminds me of DeMar DeRozan, and that automatically makes me teeter a little bit.
I forgot that this is one of the biggest names, and he gets hated on Twitter so much. In or out on Rudy Gobert?
I'm in.
This is also tough because his offensive game is so limited. I'm going to say in because his defense is way too good to be out.
But what do you, in terms of his offensive game, what are you looking for from Rudy Gobert?
It's
is
just
it the contract? Is it the contract that's screwing you up? Or what is it?
It's 100%. It's 100% the contract because you have to give him that money. He's all NBA player. He's all defensive NBA, all defense player, defensive player of the year. However many times in his career already. Mm-hmm. I understand the money he's getting because he has the accolades. It's just that skill set offensively is so limited, and it's not as if he's a super aggressive down low. He's not.
Is it limited or is just the player he is?
All I'm looking for
a little bit of both. It's just that he
or is that that's the type of big man he is?
All I'm looking for from Gobert is to be
I'm out. That's why I'm out.
The only thing I'm looking for Gobert to be is a putback player and a roller. I don't really want him to be a dominant post presence. He won't be that either, but I'm just looking for a roller.
And
honestly.
If that's the case,
Rudy Gobert averages 14 and 11 for his career.
Yep.
$100 or $200 million contract is not going to change that. You expected him to turn into Shaq when he got that money. You expected him to turn into
listen, even before that contract, we knew the contract was coming, and he was going to get that contract regardless.
Absolutely.
And I get it.
13 and 11 in the playoffs for his career.
You're happy with that, OG?
This guy is. This isn't because I'm getting paid that all of a sudden I'm going to turn into, this huge thing where I'm now Tim Duncan. No, this is who this guy is. So because he got paid, and what other options did Utah have? Let him walk out the front door?
Couldn't.
Why not trade him, OG?
For what?
We couldn't. His deal was up.
But even before then, you're going to have to pay this guy. You know that his skill set is not meant to play with a guy like Donovan Mitchell.
But Drew, why trade your identity?
Wait, hold on. He can play with Donovan Mitchell.
Why trade your identity? That's Utah's identity.
I think
defense.
the problem,
of course, but
the problem with Utah,
you get a guy like Valanciunas.
Whoa.
You get a guy like Valanciunas to space the floor a little bit. You probably would get a little bit more given the fact that Rudy Gobert is the all-world defensive player he is. You need a little bit more offensively. You can't keep relying on Donovan Mitchell to try and carry you.
Okay, Utah's problem is not Gobert. I think Utah's problem is they don't have another guy who can handle the ball outside of Mitchell.
Correct.
And outside of Royce O'Neal, they don't have a lockdown perimeter defender.
They need a wing defender.
Well, they do have another guy. It's Mike Conley, but he got hurt. That
Exactly.
was different.
Very
exactly.
true. Very true.
They need a wing stopper.
But OG, you didn't answer this. Rudy Gobert, are you out or in on him?
Oh, I'm in on Rudy.
Okay.
All day.
And just to let you guys know, on Ben Simmons, I'm 50-50. On Kristaps, I'm out on Kristaps. I am out on Kristaps. Randall, of course, I'm in. I'm a Knicks fan, but more as a second option.
Okay, fair enough.
Jimmy Butler, I'm in, and Rudy Gobert, I'm still in. And now on to this topic that I'm really excited to talk about, and I'm excited to hear your answer, OG, because you've been watching basketball for so long, so you probably have a really cool answer to this. What team was the best team to never win an NBA championship, in your opinion?
I was thinking about this question too, and I got it because what happens is it's all about matchups, right? Every team has a team that has their number. So Houston had Phoenix's number. Phoenix had Seattle's number. Seattle had Houston's number. But in my lifetime, I got to go with that 83 Bucks team.
Wow.
They had possible defense. Sidney Moncrief.
We were just talking about that team too. That's crazy.
The problem that they had was they kept running into Philly. Because they own Boston, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when Boston had Bird, McHale, and Parrish. They owned them. They kept running into Philly. And they couldn't get past Philly. That was the problem.
So the Bucks owned Boston, but I'm assuming Boston owned Philly, and Philly owned the Bucks.
There you go.
Now that cycle's crazy. That's just how it goes.
That's sheesh.
I'm actually looking at the players they had now, so I hope this is probably not the right year because
He said 83.
Okay, so Marcus
82,
Johnson, Junior Bridgman, Sidney Moncrief, Paul Pressey, Ball Lanier, Charlie,
Lanier.
Lanier, Charlie Chris. So this is the team that you're picking, OG. The 1983 Bucks.
OG was
either them or the 98 Jazz.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
OG.
That's another great pick.
Was Sidney Moncrief a better defender than Michael Jordan?
I don't know if he was a better defender, but
He was more consistent.
he was just as good as Jordan. Absolutely. Jordan was bigger than Sidney Moncrief. If Sidney Moncrief was 6'6", he'd be the best perimeter defender. He'd be better than Scottie Pippen.
Oh,
He was only 6'3".
Little guy.
If he was as big as Jordan, he would be, because he had ridiculous length. And back then, you could put hands on guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
He kept his hands and his feet busy. He was tough as nails. Sidney Moncrief was hell to deal with. Hell.
I'm gonna go next, and I'm gonna name this team. And to this day, I'm so upset that they didn't win a championship. It's very recent. The 2017-18 Houston Rockets, 65-17, the best offensive rating that year. Chris Paul, James Harden, Trevor Ariza, PJ Tucker, Clint Capella, Eric Gordon off the bench. They had Rivers and Gerald Green and those guys. Lost in 7 games to Golden State, to one of the greatest teams assembled in NBA history because Chris Paul went down. Is it 100% guaranteed that the Rockets would have beat the Warriors if Chris Paul had not went down? We're not sure. Would I have picked the Rockets to win? I would have. And Game 6 and Game 7, arguably the worst days in my life. There's a picture of me sitting down with my head down with my hand on my forehead when they lost and Steph Curry erupted. Man, honestly, this is the team I'm going with, the Rockets. James Harden is my favorite player. I'm hoping he does win in Brooklyn, but if James Harden never wins a championship, we will all look back to this year and say, damn, that could have been the year.
I'm gonna piggyback off.
Didn't they lose again to them the next year?
Yeah.
Oh, the Warriors have had the Rockets number
They lost
for a while now. Yeah.
And it wasn't just
You know why I don't they did lose the very next year, but I think losing Ariza was huge because you had to insert Gordon into the starting lineup. And I know Kevin Durant was out, but Kevin Durant was out for 1 game and a quarter. So it's not like he was out for the entire series, because for the first 4 games, Steph Curry struggled in that series. Kevin Durant was playing like God in that series. And James Harden was matching him as well.
Steph Curry has 0 points in the first half of that game 6, and they end up winning.
Yeah, and that's the one I was just thinking of right now. I mixed it up with 2018.
33.
That's insane.
But this is why I don't blame the Rockets for losing the very next year, is because that same Warriors team with the big 3 of Klay, Steph, and Draymond embarrassed Portland. Portland had a double-digit lead each game in the conference finals, and they kept coming back. And Curry was phenomenal. Because I told people that Rockets team versus Golden State, Kevin Durant puts the Warriors over the top. When you have Curry, Klay, and Draymond versus Paul, Harden, and Clint Capella, that's an even matchup still.
100%.
That's an even matchup still. So the fact that Golden State won a game and a quarter didn't surprise me.
But we can't leave out, and I'm going to let you guys get right to it. We can't leave out that, in that game 7, even though Chris Paul got hurt, 0 for 27 in the 4th, shooting the long ball. James Harden 0 for 11.
Yep.
Yikes.
Yep. And that's where I'm a huge James Harden fan, but this is where I struggle with James Harden.
I think Trevor Ariza was 0 for 9 or something like that.
Yeah, he was.
All were historically bad. PJ Tucker too.
James Harden in the regular season, I see him hit these step back threes all the time, even though he is a volume shooter. And then in the playoffs, I see these game 7s. I see that 2 for 13. And I'm just like, this just isn't the James Harden that I'm used to. And the same thing happened versus the Bucks in game 7 in these past playoffs. I know James Harden was hurt. He said he was playing on basically a grade 2 hamstring. I have 2 problems with that. One is that, why did you tell us it was grade 2 after the series? And because you lost. I think he was looking for some sympathy points right there, even though I don't want to diminish his injury. Second, he was having open shots. He didn't make them. We've seen players in the past before play through injuries and make those shots. And I know Harden is only human, but they're open shots. And he didn't make them when you needed them most. In overtime, he missed an open 3 as well. So did Joe Harris. But that's why year after year, I see Harden come up short in these big moments. And I'm kind of getting tired of defending it, because it just keeps on happening.
I'm going to backpack off Joel because I have the Rockets here too, but I was debating between the 98 Jazz and the 18 Rockets, and I ended up leaning the Rockets a bit because, me personally, I believe this Golden State Warrior team is the greatest team ever assembled. You have 3 of the greatest shooters of all time on the same team. You have the greatest shooter of all time, probably the number 2 greatest shooter in Klay Thompson. You had Draymond Green, arguably the greatest defender, and one of the best defenders in the league right now. You have the Hampton 5, where you have Andre Iguodala, and they were in position to win that series had Chris Paul not gone down. And you have Harden in that MVP season. You got the Rockets, the number 1 seed, like you mentioned. And it's unfortunate to think that I personally believe you have that momentum going into Game 6 in Oracle. Oracle's is a tough environment, but we've seen teams go into Oracle and win. We've seen LeBron go in there into Oracle. Listen, I'm not trying to say, obviously, LeBron's a different team. That 2016 LeBron team, that Cavs team was different. But we've seen teams go into Oracle and still beat them. And so it's not out of the question that if CP3 was healthy, they definitely could have closed out, because that momentum was completely on their side. And the fact that they were able to even push this team, that Warriors team, to 7 is impressive in and of itself. So I feel like that's why I lean the Rockets. I completely get the Jazz. You got Malone, you got Stockton. Russell was a great defensive piece right there. Havlicek, excuse me.
Havlicek.
John
Hornacek.
Hornacek.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's
you messed me up.
Yeah,
no, that's on
real.
me. The H has got me messed up. It's like that roster was so well put together. You got Malone, one of the best, probably the best player to never win a championship, and they just couldn't get it done because they couldn't slay the beast in Michael Jordan. But I just feel like this Rockets team, 1 game away from being the greatest team ever assembled, and that's rough.
Rev the historian, what's your take?
I had a few teams I was thinking of. 96 Supersonics. I was thinking of the 13 Spurs. But
they won the next year, so I feel like that's all right too.
Yeah, but I feel like it has to be the 16 Warriors. Like it's no way it couldn't be 73-9. Like they had arguably the greatest team season and the greatest season for all their individual players. You had the unanimous MVP who had arguably the greatest season in NBA history, or at least what we've seen, the best season we've probably ever seen. They had the defensive player of the year that year in Draymond Green. Klay Thompson makes an All-Star. All three of them make an All-Star. Yep. They have 2 All-NBA players. They walk into the playoffs. 73-9. Steph Curry hits 400 threes. Then the team comes back from a 3-1 deficit against probably one of the best OKC teams of our generation. Granted, they blew the 3-1 lead. Obviously, we know that part. But that team was just so dominant. Steph Curry was sitting a record fourth quarters. They were blowing out teams. I think they were like 25, 26-0 at a point of the season.
That's what got Luke Walton his job.
Yeah, like that team was extremely phenomenal. They were just breaking records all that year. And, we can look at, teams from the past. A couple of those Bird teams that didn't win were phenomenal. A couple Magic teams were phenomenal. The Stockton and Malone teams were extremely phenomenal. But I think this team, even the 03 Lakers who lost to the Pistons, or 04, I forget which one it was. Mm-hmm. But that team was good too. But I think like this team right here, with the fact that they dominated as a team and then individually they had their success with all their guys, winning 2 of the major awards in the NBA. I think that team easily has to be the best team that's never won a championship.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree. It's definitely between the Warriors, Rockets, and you picked the 83 Bucks. And you also thought about the 98 Jazz as well.
You mentioned OKC, and let me tell you that Harden, Russ, Kevin Durant squad, Serge Ibaka,
Steven Adams.
There you go. Like that roster was so. It's a shame. It's a shame that Russ really couldn't put
Harden
it.
was not there.
No,
Harden was there.
That 2012 team.
Oh, pardon me.
Oh.
That 20
definitely
a young
wasn't there.
They were kids though.
They were young, definitely a young core. But the fact that those three together, they couldn't keep that OKC team or that organization decided to move on from Harden so quickly. Truthfully, it was a foreshadowing of the future events for that organization.
NBA history could have been significantly different if they stayed on the same team.
No doubt about that.
But it is crazy that they all went on to go win MVPs. Kevin Durant won an MVP in 2011. But
2014.
Rose won in 2011.
Oh, you're right.
2014,
oh my gosh, I'm getting
KD
my
won.
years mixed up. So
That's
yes,
fine. Get my facts screwed up sometimes. That's okay.
Westbrook, Harden, Kevin Durant all won MVPs. That's crazy.
That 11 team, the Miami team that didn't win, was a really good team too.
Yeah,
that's a fact. But LeBron wasn't ready mentally.
I'm saying pre-finals though. Those against Boston, Indiana. LeBron
Definitely.
was on. He was on one.
No doubt. That Eastern Conference, LeBron was spazzing out. He got into the finals. He just crumbled like I've never seen.
Well, of course, I can honestly say to you today that it was different. But back then in 2011, if I told you, because just so you know, in the Eastern Conference Championship in Game 1, the Bulls beat them by 20.
Mm-hmm.
No, we smoked them.
So if I tell you after that first game, just so you know, the Bulls ain't winning another game in this series, and I got $1,000, you would have been like, I raised you $1,000.
Yeah, no doubt.
I'll take your $1,000 and let's put another $1,000 on it. There's no way you would have believed me if I would have told you after y'all smoked them in Game 1, Chicago's not winning another game in this series. You'd have been like, really?
Yeah, I didn't think we were going to win that series, but I didn't think they was going to beat us 4 straight
Just walk right past you in 4 straight games. But I'm like, yo, they ain't winning another game. No way.
Once they figured out our offense, which is really D Rose and just everything else happens, I think, and they switched, they started trapping Rose out the double team. I think it got really bad after that, because they just.
It was actually one change that they made. Put James on Rose. That was the difference in the game.
Bro,
that was the difference. Really everything else that they was doing, they just put James on Rose. Everything you do, I do it. I'm just 6 inches bigger than you, and I'm fast and I'm stronger than you. Shut them down.
The Heat were lucky, though, because if they would have faced the Melo Knicks that lost to the Pacers,
here we go.
We might be talking about different. We might be talking about different champions.
He's chatting.
That's all I'm saying.
Hey, OG, let me ask you, hypothetical. If Melo comes to the Bulls in 12, you think we could beat the Heat?
No, because Melo was, wow.
I wish Melo would have won.
Melo was very much about buckets, and that
in 12 to
that was the year we could have got him.
I'll let OG finish.
Melo was very much about buckets. That Bulls team was being built. They got Derrick Rose in the draft. They got
Noah in the draft.
Noah in the draft. they got those guys. They were building that unit and and they had a good continuity with that team. The reason why it fell apart is because Derrick Rose got hurt.
Yep.
Don't remind me, please.
But one thing
if Derrick Rose doesn't get hurt, they're right back in the middle of it.
That Melo,
and I don't know if adding Carmelo to that keeps that dynamic going. I think that might screw them up.
You also miss Luol Deng too.
Right. They got him in the draft.
So that Melo offseason.
That
Melo offseason is the offseason the Bulls went out and got Carlos Boozer.
Yes.
Okay.
No. It was.
Or they already had Boozer.
Yeah.
And they wanted to get Melo.
Mm-hmm.
Man, you have. I think Luol Deng. You might have had to trade him maybe, or slide him to.
No, Melo was supposed to take a pay cut.
Yeah,
because
he was supposed to get $80 million.
Mm-hmm. We were supposed to give him
$20
million.
He was not trying to hear. Melo was about his money.
Yeah, he chose the money over us, and D Rose didn't want to go pitch for him.
Yeah,
that's just not the type of guy he is. So he's like, I'm not doing that.
D Rose, Deng, Melo, Boozer, Noah. That would have been pretty good.
Yeah.
That would have been pretty good. We're about to talk about two championship players, all-time great players, Kobe Bryant and Tim Duncan. A lot of people have Kobe unanimously slated over Duncan because Duncan's game wasn't flashy. Nobody really pays much respect to him now, even though he is an all-time great and his resume matches up with Kobe. And I also think his death also plays a part in the way that we remember him today, because I remember when he was alive, at least, the narratives around Kobe later on to his career were that he was a ball hog, he was a bad teammate, nobody wanted to play with him. And then all of a sudden he retires, he goes on to write these books, and we view him more as a mentor. Now everybody starts to forget about these narratives. But there was a lot of nasty stuff surrounding his name. But in your opinion, who do you think was better all time? Who just had a greater impact, Kobe Bryant or Tim Duncan?
I think from just speaking from a basketball standpoint, I think comparing a big man and a guard, you can't really do from a skills standpoint, especially back in that day, because, players really played to their position. But I think looking at it, I got to give my respects to Tim Duncan. His career was phenomenal. Walking in day one, and people don't even notice, but before they got TD, Pop was about to get fired. Like, he was about to legit get fired. Getting TD, they instantly turned into a playoff team. They win a ring in 99. Those teams from 99 to I think about 04 weren't that, great. They weren't the San Antonio teams we're accustomed to. Tim Duncan was walking in the playoff series, leading the team in 4 out of the 5 statistical categories. He's not up there. I'm not saying matching Shaq for dominance, but he's up there, putting in work, doing his thing on the other end too. So I think from a longevity standpoint, playing for San Antonio his whole career, I think his career probably is a little bit better because of the MVPs, because he's racks up on the all defensive teams. He was a champion. He was a finals MVP more times. I think I would have to give it to Tim Duncan because his long-lasting impact on the Spurs and the fact that his two-way play and just how great he was on both ends really cemented him as a San Antonio Spur.
You also didn't mention that they did make the playoffs after they got Tim Duncan, but they were horrible that year because David Robinson got hurt. But even with David Robinson as their best player, he was choking in the playoffs. The year he won MVP, he matched up with Olajuwon, and Olajuwon completely dominated that matchup.
He just told me he was better than him.
It wasn't until Tim Duncan got to San Antonio to where they won championships. With David Robinson, they were going to the playoffs. They went to the West Finals, but they didn't win championships until Tim Duncan got there.
Go ahead, OG.
Well, I'm as much as I talk about, like you said, about Kobe Bryant, I'm a firm believer that you are what we see. So with that being said, it bothers me how people talk about him today because it sounds like it's fake love.
No doubt.
And the reason why I say that is because if you felt like that about him, why wasn't you talking like that about him when he was here? And all of a sudden, he's the greatest player ever. I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I never heard any of this when he was here. Yeah, he had he made books and things like that, but I never heard any of you guys talking about him like this when he was playing with the Lakers, when he was in his prime, that he's the best ever. And that doesn't negate the fact that, in my opinion, Kobe Bryant is the second best two guard behind Michael Jordan that I've ever seen. I just don't appreciate the narrative on him now, because if you felt like that about him, why wasn't you talking like that about him when he was here? That's first of all. Number two, I'm a huge fan of consistency and stability. Tim Duncan was that from the door. But before I get into that, let's understand about eras. So Dr. J got caught in the Bird and Magic era. Ewing, Malone, Gary Payton, Drexler, they got caught in the Jordan era.
Barkley, too.
Charles Barkley, don't leave him out. Got caught in the Jordan era. Tim Duncan was about to get caught in the Kobe and Shaq era. Had they been able to hold it together, we wouldn't be talking about Tim the way we do today. Let's make sure we remember 3 times in 4 years, bounced them out of the playoffs, including sweeping them in the 01 West Finals, the gentleman sweep in 5 in the 02 West Semis, and then handling them in 6 in 04 in the West Semis. So we wouldn't be talking about Tim Duncan the way we are today had they been able to hold it together, but they weren't able to hold it together. So Tim Duncan became that model of consistency while that was going on. We talking about a guy who was 21-10 regularly. Plus, we talking about a guy who came out the gate from the door. He was first team All-NBA as a rookie. So this guy became that, and he just continued that. We had to wait for Kobe to become that. And I don't really like grading big men and guards. I'd much rather grade guys on their position. But I look at Kobe Bryant and I look at Tim Duncan, and I give the edge to Tim Duncan.
Yeah, and Tim Duncan is the best power forward of all time, undisputedly.
Ever. Numero uno.
Like, nobody that knows basketball is putting anybody over Tim Duncan all time in power forwards. But shooting guards, Kobe, I mean, it's hard. It's Jordan. He's obviously one of the
and
GOATs.
He modeled his game off Jordan.
So that's why it's so hard. So, Drew, who are you going with, Kobe or Duncan?
So it's funny, we were talking before the show, and I was saying I must have been debating this for like 2 hours. It's probably the toughest sports question I've ever been asked, because you look at the two resumes, it's pretty identical. I mean, you got a few here and there. Kobe has a few more All-Stars. Timmy has a extra MVP, an extra Finals MVP. It's really close. Obviously, this guy, Kobe, was the better scorer. I just think on a more consistent basis, Tim Duncan, from jump to when he retired, maybe the year before he retired, from 98 to 14, he retired in 15. He had his team in contention to win a championship every single year. You mentioned how in 01, 02, 03, 04, that Lakers team was dominant. That's an all-time roster right there. And it wasn't until Ginobili, Parker came along where that team really started to get it together and really compete for a championship year in, year out. But Tim Duncan was the core of that squad, the leader of that squad. He meant more to his squad. Not that Kobe didn't mean a whole bunch to his game. 100% Kobe was as reliable as it gets. But as it stands on who you can trust to do everything for your squad, Tim Duncan solved all that problems. You need him to score, he could do that. Rebound the basketball, he could do that. Pass the basketball, he could do that. One of the best big men defenders that this game's ever seen. His playmaking ability was unmatched. This guy, Tim Duncan, from the start to finish, there is no way you could debate that he didn't have his team contending for a championship. And I just look at Kobe. He was obviously this all-time great scorer, and I would never say anything otherwise. His efficiency's a little bit too inefficient for my liking. Obviously, you're the best scorer on your team. You're going to get the most shots on the squad. I would have just liked to see him be a little bit more efficient in the middle part of his career.
Well, Tim Duncan was better at the things he should have been better at.
Correct.
I play closer to the basket, so I am going to be more efficient.
Correct.
Which I can get with that. He was a better rebounder. All right, I play in the post. So he was supposed to be that, which, all right, I could get with that also. But Tim Duncan did win league MVP when Kobe and Shaq were in the league.
Correct.
He did it twice. In fact, not only did he do it twice, he did it in back-to-back seasons.
Yep.
You know, he was a 15-time all-league defender when these guys were in the league.
Yep.
And I can't reiterate this enough. He was the model of consistency. This guy stayed healthy. He stayed on the floor. And he brought, you knew what you were getting from him every single season. And there was no question about it.
You all bring amazing points.
He's never missed the playoffs.
Tim Duncan, you're saying.
Tim Duncan is
Zero.
never.
0
Unbelievable.
years.
Never.
Not one time.
It's hard to dispute the points you guys made because you guys all made excellent points. You talk about how Tim Duncan was that guy from the beginning. That's absolutely true. Kobe took a while, but I'll say this. I got this book called The 3-Ring Circus. It's written by Jeff Pearlman. He was a guest on the show before. He's an author, and in this book, he talks about the Lakers' path to those 3 rings and how messy it was. And you got it right there, OG. Amazing book.
Hey, that's awesome.
So reading that book, it got me. I learned about how Del Harris was one of the main components of why Kobe Bryant wasn't able to blossom right off the gate. That's why I pushed back on that just a little bit, because I think had he gotten drafted to New Jersey, where he should have gotten drafted to if it wasn't for John Calipari getting cold feet, he would have been 20 points per game off the bat in New Jersey. And when I look at Kobe and what he did in 05 and 06, averaging 35 points per game, which if he did it in today's game, he probably wins MVP over Steve Nash, who those numbers today, nobody's giving him the MVP for.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think he wins it over Steve Nash?
Because it's 35 points per game. You lead a team in the West.
He's an 8th seed.
The league holds scoring to a higher standard now.
And in today's game, we saw Russell
No, they
Westbrook.
don't, because if they did, then Steph Curry would have won the league MVP. So no, they don't.
That's a good point, OG, but at the same time...
But Steph Curry didn't make the playoffs, though.
Jokic was still averaging 25+, and his team, without Jamal Murray...
He was averaging a double-double.
You're saying...
Nash averaged a double-double.
Well, Jokic was close to a triple-double.
That is true.
And at the center position, too. So
The only reason why he didn't win, the only reason why he won the league MVP was because Joel Embiid got hurt.
Oh, listen, OG, I'm with you 100% there. I think Joel Embiid should have been the MVP. Even over Steph, even over Jokic, in my opinion. Even with the injury. That being said, I just think that the fact that his team was an 8 seed, 9 seed, didn't even make the playoffs, because he didn't even win the playoff, Steph Curry.
Oh.
That's why you couldn't consider him the MVP this year, even with the amount of points. Because then at that point, then Bradley Beal got to be in consideration. Then at that point,
then why did Russ win it in 16?
Average a triple-double, and that's the first time it happened since Oscar.
And that's
Oscar
the point I was making.
And Oscar didn't win the league MVP.
Yeah.
But he averaged a triple-double.
And that's egregious. And I'm with you. Oscar obviously should have won the MVP there, but no one thought that it would ever happen again.
And Oscar should have won the league MVP. He actually had a dude that was behind him who averaged 38 and 18.
Of course.
Who finished
Of
fourth
course.
that year.
Of course. Yeah.
So this is the thing.
unbelievable.
So you brought up a great point, and I think that Russell Westbrook MVP, I thought it should have went to James Harden. That's just me personally. But I think
I thought it should have went to LeBron, but that's just me.
Yeah.
Go ahead. All right, keep going.
So
But
I
that's
think,
like 7-8 years, OG.
I think in this league, Kobe probably does get the MVP. But okay, he didn't get the MVP. But what I saw, what Kobe did that year, leading a team, that third best player was Smush Parker, because you can't leave Lamar Odom. Oftentimes people leave the fact that Lamar Odom was on this team. Lamar Odom wasn't bad. And in the playoffs, he averaged 19 and 11 versus the Suns. But Smush Parker as your third best player, leading that team to the playoffs in a tough Western Conference. I haven't seen Tim Duncan be on a team that trash and lead them to the playoffs.
You think so?
I do think so.
Did you see his first couple teams?
Weren't that bad, bro.
They weren't
Really?
that good.
He had Sean Elliott and Avery Johnson.
Sean Elliott wasn't a bad player, though.
But he was, come on.
Are we going to say Lamar Odom is better than Sean Elliott?
Ah,
I would take Sean Elliott over Lamar
they're
Odom.
right there.
I know, that is really close.
Yeah, come on. Tim Duncan has done it, and he went to the finals.
I know, but I'm just saying, I think I really haven't seen Tim Duncan do that. And also, when we talk about greatest, we have to talk about a cultural standpoint as well. I know we talk about strictly basketball, but basketball is much more than just the game. Just from what Kobe has meant to me, because I'm one of those people who have always defended Kobe. I was hoping that dream team at the time of Nash, Howard, Kobe, Gasol, and Artest were going to win, but they failed miserably.
Nash was washed by that time.
He was.
He was.
Back was terrible.
Nash
He
was
was.
washed.
So for me, my greatest moment watching basketball was 2010 when the Lakers won the championship, Game 7. That's my greatest moment watching basketball. Even though I thought Artest had the biggest moment in that game, along with Gasol, and Kobe shot terribly, that was just my greatest moment watching basketball. Just growing up playing basketball, I was the type of person to look up motivational workout videos of Kobe Bryant just talking about what he does and how he prepares and his craft. And just from a cultural standpoint, knowing Tim Duncan is out of the way, He doesn't talk much, but Kobe is that guy who, for a lot of people, is not only a mentor, but for people who don't have fathers in their lives, was kind of like that pseudo father figure. I think that Kobe Bryant was the greater of the two in terms of impact. And as players, it was close as well.
One thing I will say that you just mentioned that made me think of it is Kobe didn't play well all too great in that Game 7.
He didn't.
And his team still won that game. You look at the 2013 series where Tim Duncan hits that bunny, the game's over. Tim Duncan hits that bunny, that game's over. But instead, LeBron gets the chance to go and ice the game, and he goes and he does that, of course, because he's King James. That being said, Tim Duncan didn't have all too much help. That, you know what I'm trying to say?
Wait, that year?
And that's not what I mean. The fact that
Okay.
it came out wrong 100%. What I meant to say is you have Tim Duncan who needed to make that shot for his team to win, but yet Kobe had an entire bad game. Tim Duncan played great up until that point. Missed one shot, cost his team the game. Kobe Bryant basically played, I don't want to say horrible because that's strong. He didn't play well.
But
his team still won the game.
That game
he actually did. He actually had a really good game. You're just going off the fact that he didn't shoot it that well.
Yeah,
he had 15 boards in that game.
That game,
that 2-guard spot.
But
that game was one of the
he's
lowest scoring finals.
It's Kobe Bryant. What are you looking for him to do? I respect the fact that he was
everything in Game 7, and that's exactly what he did. A guy who adjusted, who recognized that I'm not getting it done shooting the basketball, so I'm going to do other things.
Okay.
And he ended up with 15 boards at the 2-guard spot. So that was a big deal. I can't disregard that. Yeah. I can't just look at the fact that he went 5 for 20 that night. No, he had 15 boards.
Yeah, not only that, but I think that game in particular was one of the lowest scoring finals games. And in the third quarter, they were both at like 50 points. I mean, it was a really low scoring game. Everybody in that game was off. Everybody. And Kobe, I think, shot 6 for 24 that game. He shot 6 for 24.
Something egregious.
But he did have 15 rebounds. And you know, you can't dispute that. But just for me, those moments that Kobe offered me as a child, that nostalgia, that's why I put him over. That's why I put him over. That's the reasoning. But from a basketball resume standpoint and the points that you brought up, I can totally understand why you would put Duncan over Kobe all time.
I just think people put Kobe over because they fall in love with his game and they don't find Tim Duncan to be an exciting player to watch. You know, I think the age and day we are in now, people just love the excitement. That's why they love Kyrie so much. That's why they love Steph so much. It's the excitement of the player and what he does. I think Duncan.
That's why a lot of people put players over James Harden.
Look, in this Game 7 that Tim Duncan had 24 points. This is the third to last year of his career, and he's leading his team in scoring. This was the prime of Kobe's career, that 2009.
You know, Tim Duncan is the oldest player to make an all-defensive team.
I mean, Tim Duncan was, like we said, however, you said it, he said it, I said it, from day one.
He was also first-team All-NBA that year, too. Yep. Don't leave that out.
He was as great as you could be his entire career, and the fact that he still led his team in scoring. You look at Game 6, he had to rely on Kawhi Leonard and Manu Ginobili to hit those free throws, and the game's iced. They win in Game 6 in Miami. Instead, they end up missing those free throws. We see the illustrious Ray Allen historical three, probably the greatest shot in finals history. But then Tim Duncan says, you know what? Even after that horrible loss, I'm going to come back Game 7. I'm going to still give my team a chance to win. And he did exactly that, 24 and 12. What more could you ask for? 4 steals, a block. And thinking about the two, it's Kobe Bryant's prime. Would you consider this Tim Duncan's prime, OG? I mean, I guess you can consider.
He wasn't over, but he was still respectable. He was on the other side of his prime.
100%. And the fact that he was still able to produce like this so late into his career, I can't take that for granted.
OG, let me ask you a question because we were talking about the Kobe and Tim Duncan situation. I don't remember exactly if these were the same teams, but Detroit played both guys, right? The legendary Detroit teams, that defense, they played both guys. I don't know if they had the same exact rosters, but the main core was there. Why did Tim Duncan and Tony was able to get it done, and why couldn't Kobe and Shaq beat them?
Which is incredible to me because what they did in that series, I got to be honest with you guys. If they played the Lakers 10 times, they would have beat them 9. The way that they had the Lakers off balance, the way that they pushed the Lakers back, offensively, having them start their off. Shaq was a primary player. Shaq's primary role was on the box.
Yep.
They had Shaq pushed all the way up to the free throw line, into the mid post. They didn't speed the game up. They had the game slowed down because the Lakers wanted to play faster than what they wanted to play. They wanted to get out in transition. Kobe at that time also was getting himself in a lot of trouble with Tayshaun Prince. Tayshaun Prince did a really good job against Kobe Bryant. He did a really good job against him.
Great defender.
But as a unit, collectively, they did a great job of keeping the Lakers off balance. And that's what they couldn't do with the Spurs, because the Spurs and Tim Duncan and Manu, they didn't allow Detroit to make them play the way Detroit wanted them to play. That's what the Lakers did. The Lakers allowed Detroit to make them play the way they wanted. And that was the difference in the series.
That's crazy.
And San Antonio beat them
4-2, I believe.
4-2, or was it 4-1? It was one of those.
Who are you talking about?
Lakers
the
4-1.
Spurs versus the Spurs versus the
6,
Pistons.
right? If I'm not mistaken.
Against the Pistons? No, 7 games in 05.
Oh, 7 games.
In
Okay.
a
I know
dog fight.
Detroit beat LA in 5. I remember that one.
It's funny because
Detroit beat LA in 5, but the Spurs beat Detroit in 7 in 05. It was a dog fight.
It was
a
a
dog
7.
fight,
Game
man.
7 was in San Antonio.
Game 7 was in San Antonio. It was a dog fight.
I
It
have
was a
to-
one-possession game at the end of the game.
Oh my
I have to
Lord.
rewatch that
Me too.
series. I watched the game, I think, a couple months ago when I was at work. We I work security, so I have so much downtime to just watch games. But when you showed me the 3-Ring Circus book, it really excited me. Did you read the entire book?
I've been read. As soon as it first came out, I read it.
Yeah, I'm on the chapter called The Worm. I haven't finished it yet. I'm really bad with finishing books. I have to fix that about myself. But in that book, that's where I learned that Kobe Bryant could have possibly been a New Jersey Net. Right now, I'm a Knicks fan primarily because I told myself when I was younger, whichever team Carmelo gets traded to, I'm going to be the fan of that team, because I was a Nets and Knicks fan. But also, around that time, there were already rumblings about the Nets moving to Brooklyn. I'm from New Jersey, so if the Nets are from New Jersey, I'll be a New Jersey Nets fan. But if they go to Brooklyn, I'm just going to be a fan of the New York team instead of the Brooklyn team. So that's why I'm a Knicks fan. So knowing that Kobe could have possibly been on the Nets, in that book, that's where I found that out, to me is one of the biggest what-ifs in NBA history, along with Kobe Bryant almost going to the LA Clippers, because when Jeff Perlman was on the show, he talked about how Kobe could have been a Clipper before they traded for Pau Gasol. He could have went to the LA Clippers, and he could have teamed up with Elton Brand, and they had a good squad over there. And those are...
That was Elton Brand, Darius Miles, and them boys. Lamar Odom.
Lamar Odom wasn't there.
Okay.
No, he wasn't there. But that's my two biggest what-ifs, him going to the Clippers or him getting drafted to the Nets. If he got drafted to the Nets, I think statistically he's in a far different category.
Of course.
But I don't think they get Jason Kidd if he goes to the Nets. They probably don't get Kenyon Martin because they were so bad. That's why they got Kenyon Martin. And I don't know. I think they still do get Keith Van Horn, but I think the Nets just would have been a very bad team.
Now I have a question. Do you think that Kobe's trajectory, if he were to be on the Nets, would it be comparable to Carmelo Anthony?
Oof, I don't know. That's a good point. If he gets drafted to the Nets, I think he's, instead of a 5-time champion, he's probably a 1 or 2-time champion.
I still think
depending
he
on the
wins.
team that he goes to in free agency.
After seeing the grit that he went through in 2009, 2010, I definitely agree with that statement. I think he probably would have gotten a championship sometime during his career. But to compare him to Carmelo Anthony is not too far off. It's just that Carmelo couldn't adjust to not being the primary ball handler towards the end.
But Carmelo wasn't a defender.
And that's another thing, too. Kobe Bryant definitely had the edge defensively.
You know, for me, when I was reading the book, the story that stood out is that when he almost went to the Nets, John Nash, the GM at the time, he wanted Kobe. He wanted Kobe badly. John Calipari was the head coach. John Calipari got cold feet last minute because I think Kobe Bryant's camp called Calipari and said, Kobe, if he gets drafted to the Nets, is not going to play for them, and he's going to go play in Italy instead, professionally over there.
Wow.
John Nash wasn't buying the bluff, and he said, no, we have to take him. And he thought they were going to take Kobe, but last minute, John Calipari goes with Kerry Kittles, who was a okay NBA player, but definitely not Kobe Bryant. But yeah, John Calipari, I believe in that book, or Jeff Perlman stated it on the show, that that ruined Calipari's reputation as an NBA guy.
Well, he's one of the greatest college coaches ever. So, boom.
So, OG, what's your biggest what if in NBA history?
Oh, for me, it's simple. Len Bias.
Yeah.
Yo.
Yeah.
Was I not gonna say that?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
For me, it's Lenny Bias. I was in grade school and I was in grammar school, and I just remember when Jordan came into the league, I was paying attention to Jordan in the league, but back then, college basketball was a big deal because we got to watch these guys grow. And not only did we get to watch these guys grow, we got to pontificate. We got to speculate on, is like if you saw today with Grant Hill, not today, I'm sorry, back in the 90s when I saw Grant Hill, I'm watching him and I'm thinking, is he going to be good as Scottie Pippen?
OG, did you read our notes before the?
I did not.
I'm just messing with you, OG. Go ahead.
I did not, sir. But when I saw Len Bias, and for him to get on the Celtics, Larry Bird said, had Lenny lived, he would have quit in '88. That's how confident he felt about turning the team over to him. Larry Bird said that if the Celtics were to draft Len, he was coming to rookie camp. This was the same year that Larry Bird won the league MVP. So what it would be the equivalent to, it'd be the equivalent to Jordan in '92. If the Bulls were to draft Shaq, and Jordan goes, I'm coming to rookie camp. That's how big a deal Lenny was. Lenny was the guy, if you're a GM, what do I need to give you to get that guy? Because I'm going to build my entire unit around him. He's the future of my unit. And I thought he would have been phenomenal. And it broke my heart with what happened to him.
That was definitely a tragic story. I mean, you living through that time, the very next day after he was drafted, I mean, how did you feel the atmosphere in the world felt?
I got a buddy of mine I was in school with. I was going into the 8th grade, as a matter of fact. And he came to me. He was like, yo, Len Bias died last night. And he's one of those guys that likes to joke a lot. I was like, what? You lying? And then turns out this was true. And I was like, what? Oh, I was crushed behind that, man, because like I said, college basketball back then, we saw guys that were going to be good in the pros, and we just looked at them like, yo, is Len Bias as good as James Worthy? Can he be better than him? And that's how we saw these guys, and that's how we rated them. So when I saw Len, that's what I was looking at. I was looking at a guy who could be that good, to be James Worthy good, to be better than Mark Aguirre and guys like that. So when he passed away, I was broken hearted.
Man. That's kind of how I felt when Kobe passed. Because when Kobe passed, I was working at the time, and I told one of my friends, one of my coworkers, that Kobe just passed, and they thought I was joking too. They was like, "No way, that can't be possible." And I said, "Look, so definitely like something as shocking as that. It's crazy to believe that it's true when somebody tells you like that."
No doubt. Go ahead, Riv.
What level of hype did before you go, Riv? What level of hype did Len Bias have? Was it LeBron level hype? Was it Zion level hype? Just for people to get a grasp of understanding.
Zion or LeBron, but to give you an idea, it was during the big man era, and that's what teams did. They built around the big man. The Celtics only worked out Len Bias. They didn't work out anybody else, and they didn't have the number 1 pick. They had the 3rd pick.
Number 2.
They didn't work out. I'm sorry. It was the.
I'm looking at it right now. He was the number 2 pick overall.
He was the number 2 pick behind Chris Washburn.
Yep.
He went in front of Chris Washburn. That's correct. I'm sorry. They had the number 2. They didn't work out anybody else because they knew that Brad Daugherty was going number 1, and they knew that Len was their guy. They were convinced of that. So they knew that we're going to have this guy, and we're going to build our unit around him. And I mean, he was coming. The Celtics had just won the championship the year before, that same year. So to get Len and for him to play behind Bird.
OG, remind me how they got that second overall
pick.
Oh boy! If I remember correctly, it was. I don't remember correctly, so I couldn't tell you right off the top of my head. I got to go do some more homework on it.
But OG.
It was something that Red Auerbach, he ended up same way he got the number 3 pick to get Kevin McHale, where he gave Golden State. He told Golden State that they were picking Joe Barry Carroll, but
so you
could have the number 3 pick. I mean, you could have the number 3 pick and give us your pick instead. It was something crazy like that. That's how they got
you. Drew right here mentioned the Supersonics.
So
was it the Dennis Johnson trade to the Sonics, or no? Was Dennis Johnson on the Sonics first or the Celtics first? I think he was
already in Boston.
He was in Boston.
Okay.
He was already in Boston at that time. That might have very well been it, where Dennis Johnson trade to the Celtics, because I think they got him in '83. Yeah, they got Dennis Johnson in '83.
Boston was stealing.
Yeah.
How you win a chip? You got the second pick.
So did you find it, Drew, or no?
It's just that the Supersonics were the ones that made the trade.
Okay.
The Celtics were able
so,
to
Riv,
get
what was
the
the point you were gonna make earlier when you were about to speak, or did you forget it?
I completely forgot.
Understandable.
Damn.
Just go into your what if.
Okay, yeah, I got 2 what ifs. I was gonna I changed mine up because I wanted to get your takes on like just a hypothetical. So my first what if is obviously, what if Shaq doesn't get traded and gets the extension and stays in Orlando? How many chips do you think they win if Penny stays healthy?
I think they definitely do win a championship, because that team was loaded.
Because this is coming off the sweep to Houston, then they lose to Jordan and Rodman and Pippen after, and I think that's when Shaq after gets traded or goes to LA. However he goes to LA.
That could have changed the trajectory of the Bulls' finals runs.
And we talking about Penny Hardaway different today too.
100% what I was thinking too. It's how do you think that Penny matches up with Kobe? Truthfully, do you think that
we talking about him? That's how we talking about it now. Instead of, because they were Kobe and Shaq before Kobe and Shaq.
100%.
We're talking about completely different.
100%.
Absolutely.
So for you, Drew, what's your what if?
So mine's actually Grant Hill. You mentioned Grant Hill, and when Grant Hill was in college, people were talking about this guy could be the next Michael Jordan. This guy was super athletic in college, had won championships in Duke. And you look at his time with the Pistons, and he comes in, wins the Rookie of the Year, co-Rookie of the Year with Jason Kidd. They kind of dubbed him the Rookie of the Year prior to the season already happening. But regardless, he was still amazing that year, still averaged 19. For the first 6 seasons of his career, prior to any injury, averaged 21, basically 8 rebounds, 6 assists. Just one of the most complete players at the time. One of the first guys to really be an all-around type player like that, with that kind of size, that kind of athleticism. And to have this type of ankle injury before he really could hit his stride into the true prime of his career. And you think about the what if. That Pistons team went on to go be a dominant force in the NBA, 2004, 2005.
Longer than that.
For sure. It's just that those 2 championship runs, Grant Hill could have easily been a part of that and really been a key factor to that squad. It's just that ankle injury took a huge toll on him. After that ankle injury, he dropped in points by 8 points per game, dropped in rebounds by 4 rebounds a game, dropped in assists by 4 assists a game. That ankle injury completely changed the trajectory of how people were looking at him. And to start his career, I'm not going to call him Michael by any means. Michael was just a different type of ball player. But what he brought you on the floor every night, he could do everything for you 100%. And what if Grant Hill was on that 2004-2005 squad? Do you think the Pistons are able to formulate that squad the way they were?
No, because they would have been much better, first of all.
100%.
So they wouldn't have ended up with
Prince, right? If I'm not mistaken.
They wouldn't have ended up with Prince. They wouldn't have ended up with Chauncey Billups. It would have been because they would have been building that unit around
Grant Hill.
First of all. Number 2, don't leave out the fact that, like you said, he was 21 a game. You know, Grant Hill was first. He was All NBA 5 times.
100%. 100%.
So you can't leave that part out. Not to mention, and a lot of people, I got some pushback from this from my cousin, but Grant Hill was a better version of Scottie Pippen. That's who he was when he was playing. When he was becoming that, he wasn't a defender that Scottie was, but he was becoming that player.
Ooh, that's I don't know if I can ride with that one.
He was a better offensive player.
He definitely was a better offensive player. I will give you that.
We had this argument the other day, OG, on the show. We have a lot of arguments. It's like my 4th time saying this. But we had an argument that year that Michael left to go play baseball and Scottie Pippen was the leader of that Bulls team that went to the playoffs and lost to the Knicks. Drew over here, we were debating if Scottie Pippen was the best player in the NBA at that time. Me and Riv said no. We didn't even think he was top 3, I believe. We ended off with Hakeem, Shaq, and Malone. In your opinion, where that season, where was Scottie Pippen? Was he top 3? Was he the best? Was he top 5? Where was he?
Just so you guys know, that season, Scottie Pippen was the only player in the history of the NBA to be on a team that won 55 games or more and lead that team in every major category and not win league MVP.
Which makes it inexcusable.
Who won league MVP that year?
In 94 was Olajuwon.
Correct.
He was defensive player of the year and he was league MVP.
And then he won the ring.
Scottie Pippen was second in rebounding, and he was second in blocks on the Bulls. He led them in everything else, and they won 55 games. The only player in NBA history to do that. No other player in NBA history has ever done it.
In the year that Jordan leaves, it just means so much more to me.
So, OG, are you telling us Scottie should have won that over Olajuwon?
What I'm telling you is...
OG, ride with me. Ride with me. Let me hear it.
What I'm telling you is he's the only player to never win it after doing those things. He was first team All-NBA that year, too. Don't leave that out.
So OG, would you say he was? Would you say he was the best player in the NBA that year?
Olajuwon.
So would you say Scottie was 2, 3, top 5 for sure?
Scottie Pippen was definitely a top 5 player that year. In fact, he was when the year Jordan retired until the year Jordan came back, and when Jordan came back in the 1995-96 season, Scottie Pippen was a top 5 player.
100%. So for me personally, when we were talking about it, I had him over Malone. I had him over Shaq, but it's a little hard for me because Shaq was a pup, but he still averaged 28 and I think
11.
Something crazy like that.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that Scottie was able to will this team after losing the greatest player of all time at the time, because you know who we got number 1. You lose MJ to still be as effective and still have your team in a position to be successful, as you mentioned, to lead every category for his team. I just feel like that speaks volumes to me that he was still able to do it and still do it at an even higher level than what he was doing at the year before.
He averaged the most points a game for his career that season.
Correct.
In the 1994 season. He'd never averaged that many points again.
He had to. He had no choice.
When Jordan left, was Malone better than Pippen in your opinion?
When Jordan left, was Malone better than Scottie Pippen?
Yep.
That 1 year, OG.
Well, for those 2 years, that 2-year stretch.
Well, he ended up coming back.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that Bulls team wasn't that good.
I think statistically he had a better season than Scottie, but I think Scottie meant more to the Bulls than Malone meant.
100% agree.
And Shaq, would you put Pippen over Shaq?
Yeah, I think he was better. Shaq was just dominant. It wasn't like Shaq was just dominant. That's all I can really say about Shaq. Shaq wasn't the force defensively that he could have been. I mean, he was a big-time rebounder, but
just didn't have
overall,
the drive.
I think Scottie was a better player.
So you're saying
Shaq was more impactful and dynamic.
So you're saying Scottie in that 2-year stretch was the second best player in the NBA?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying he was a top 5 player in the NBA.
Okay, what players would you put over Scottie?
Hakeem is undisputed.
Yeah, Hakeem.
I'm with Hakeem.
Olajuwon is undisputed.
Correct.
Let me make sure I'm not misquoted. Let me make sure I'm not misunderstood. Scottie meant more to his team at that particular time than I think Malone did. Malone had a better season than Scottie.
Okay, I get what you're saying. Okay.
But I think Scottie meant more because Scottie was now in his natural position of a facilitator now that Jordan was gone. So he was now playing in his natural position of being a facilitator who could score. So with that being said, Malone had a better season statistically. Same thing with David Robinson. He had a better season statistically. Those guys were better statistically than Scottie, but Scottie was definitely a top 5 player that year.
Okay. And now this segues into my next question I want to ask, which I probably know your answer already, but it's a topic that a lot of people, at least today, lean the opposite side of what I think your response is going to be. Could players in the 80s/90s play in today's game and be as effective today as they were in that time? For example, John Stockton.
I don't think the game has changed that much that like a guy like John Stockton, like I talked to you earlier about Magic, you know, a guy like John Stockton who can get to the basket on anybody because the game is so wide open and the playmaker that John Stockton is and how tough John Stockton was. John Stockton was a 5-time All-League defender. So he could defend at the highest level. So he could deal with guys. He was dealing with big-time athletic guys, and he was still making an All-League defensive team because the game is so wide open. I think that he would be great in this era. Absolutely.
And in this 15-year window that the game has changed so much, somebody I think would be even better than he was then was Dwayne Wade. I know he didn't play in the 90s or 80s, but in this wide open league, I think Dwayne Wade would be ridiculous in this league, as wide open as the game is now.
I think he would have to shore up that mid-range game a little bit more, because Dwayne was definitely more of a going to the basket kind of guy.
Definitely.
And I think that he would have to shore up that mid-range game a little bit more, and that would help him because Dwayne got beat up a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what shortened his career. Not shortened his career, that's what shortened his prime.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's what shortened his prime because he got beat up a lot. So I think Dwayne Wade would be very good in this era, no doubt.
So what's your opinion on people that think that the game has evolved so much from not only how the game is played, but from an athletic standpoint that makes them think players from older eras couldn't play today?
Well, what I don't understand is I don't understand when I see guys from that era and I think to my, like Jordan was dunking the ball from the free throw line. Dominique Wilkins in dunk contest was catching the ball from the dotted line and dunking the ball. So, Kenny Smith finished second in the dunk contest in 90. So the athlete was still there. Fat Lever almost averaged a triple-double where he went, I think it was 19, 9, and 8. And he was Russell Westbrook might have been a better version of Fat Lever. Mm-hmm. So I think that those guys athletically could compete today. Not to mention, because the game changed, those guys would have adjusted their games today than they did. They wouldn't play like that. It would be like coming to a class where they're teaching different. If I'm going to learn this, I got to adjust. Otherwise, I'm going to get pushed out. And I think that those guys would have adjusted. I think Dominique Wilkins would be awesome in this era. I think Shaq would have struggled in this era because of the big man and how he plays on the perimeter. I do think Shaq would struggle.
You think more he'll struggle on defense than anything?
Yes.
Okay, defense, that's fair.
Yeah, I do think he would struggle on defense more because where the big man plays and how far out he plays on defense, where you got to chase guys around. And Shaq had a really difficult time in the pick and roll. Of all the defensive schemes that he had to deal with, he had a very difficult time in the pick and roll. So I think he'd struggle today defensively.
And you don't think the bigs from the 90s and 80s like Ewing, Hakeem, Shaq, the Admiral, you don't think Kareem, you don't think they'll come in and readjust the NBA?
That's a great question.
That's exactly where I was going.
I think Olajuwon would be awesome in the game today. Well, the reason why the game has gone away from those guys is because of the Euro. So Olajuwon, Ewing, David Robinson, the traditional big, that was the guy. Well, then enter Tony Kukoc, enter Dirk Nowitzki. Now they're telling us that this is the future of basketball, the 6'10", 6'11" guy playing outside and shooting the long ball. And this is where his game starts. And this is the future of basketball. So now we're going away from the traditional big who plays on the box, who you dump the ball down to him. Plus, it's more entertaining seeing that big guy shooting the long ball and playing faster. And now the game is changing. So that's how we got away from that. So I don't think that guys like Olajuwon would keep the game the way it is because the game went away from that because of the influx of the Euro.
Right.
I agree that they wouldn't completely take their game from how it was and translate it now into the current NBA, but you don't think that they would adjust to how the NBA plays? I feel like I look at Olajuwon and I see a lot of Joel Embiid. Obviously, I think Olajuwon's better than Joel Embiid, but I just feel like that game's so similar that I feel like Olajuwon, Malone, Charles Barkley, which is a more skilled offensive Draymond Green, that size, solely off size. I feel like definitely they could come into this NBA and adjust to how it's played now. And we spoke about it a little before. You look at players that have played in the league for so long already. LeBron James, he was not taking not nearly as many three-pointers as he is now early in his career, just because that's how the game has evolved now. And you look at someone like Carmelo Anthony, where he was amazing early in his career. He couldn't adjust to the new NBA, ended up fading him. Has definitely been a solid role player as of the last few years, but it took him a few years to adjust to how the game's played now. So I feel like some players would be able to adjust. You look at the Hakeems, you look at the Malones, you look at the Patrick Ewings, where they had a mid-range game and they could still beat you down low. I feel like they definitely would be able to to adjust and learn to this new NBA.
David Robinson would be awesome today.
100%, no doubt about that.
Incredible. David Robinson would be awesome today. Absolutely.
And another thing that makes me feel that way is I understand Giannis is a freak athlete, no doubt about it. But the fact that he doesn't have a jump shot or a consistent jump shot, and he's still able to get 28 to 30 points a night, I feel as if definitely Hakeem could come in and mirror that and still be efficient defensively. 100%. These guys are definitely faster. But these guys were too smart back then to not be able to adjust to the game as it's played right now.
And, you made a great point when you said Shaq struggled in the pick and roll, because on Inside the NBA the other night when I was watching, I think Kenny Smith or Charles Barkley were breaking down pick and roll defense, and Shaq said something totally off the wall that was wrong about how you should play the pick and roll defensively. And there was a tweet that trended on Twitter that's like, yeah, this guy, if he played today, he would still struggle in the pick and roll. No doubt about it. So on to the last question. I think this is going to be geared towards more Riv and you, because when we talk about the GOAT debate, I fall in the middle, because I think the debate has just been beaten up so much to death that I get tired of it. But I know that you, OG, you think LeBron is the GOAT, and you'd build your unit around him before you'd build it around Jordan. Riv here is the opposite. He thinks Jordan is the GOAT. So I want to hear your take on why you'd pick LeBron over Jordan.
Well, I've never, and I've had this discussion already, I've never seen, when Jordan came out of college, there was a lot of fanfare for Jordan. There was a lot of hype. And Jordan wasn't expected to do much. He came from North Carolina, averaged 19 a game. He was the college player of the year before. So that Chicago Bulls team was terrible. And he wasn't expected to do much. And he comes into the league and lights it on fire. Averages 28 a game as a rookie, starts in the All-Star game. And every organization, and I mentioned this before, every championship organization has that aha moment where they have that guy that, okay, this is my guy. This is who I'm building it around. And I got to go get this guy some players, because this is the future of my organization. And the Bulls found that out in '86 after the Celtics series when Jordan went off on them. And the Celtics are basically considered, at that time, they were considered the best team that the NBA had ever seen. So with that being said, the Bulls became the model of consistency, where Jordan had Paxson for 8 years. He had Horace Grant and Scottie Pippen for 6 years. He had Bill Cartwright for 5 years. He had B.J. Armstrong for 4 years. So it's obvious that the Bulls were serious about not just winning, but about building it around him and giving him that environment of consistency. I've never seen a guy, and I watched Jordan develop into that. So by the time we get to the 1991-92 season, I'm looking at Michael Jordan, and he's the guy who he's basically the Matrix, where Neo had it figured out at that point, where everything was just moving slow, and he was moving. I got this thing figured out. You guys have no idea what you're up against when you're dealing with me, and just get in line. And it starts at the Mississippi. So I saw his development. And it was because how the Bulls put that unit together around him. Now, when you talk about a guy like James, I'm sorry, I keep saying James. You talk about a guy like LeBron.
Keep going on. You're good, OG.
You keep talking about a guy. Now, you talk about a guy like LeBron. I have never seen I don't mean a basketball player. I've never seen an athlete come into professional sports with the amount of fanfare, the amount of pressure, and the amount of hype that LeBron came in with. And to live up to that hype, after everybody said that he couldn't do it. Not only did everybody say he couldn't do it, he goes to this terrible Cleveland team, which is right down the block from where I live. And I got that added pressure into it as well, because I'm from here, which they don't have any model of consistency. The only consistent player that LeBron had was Ilgauskas. That was it. So for 7 years, he was the only one. They were putting ragtag crews together with James, and they were telling him, go figure it out. He was doing that. We're talking about a guy who in year 3 wins a playoff series. They talking about Luka being better than James, Luka being better than LeBron. Luka hasn't been out of the first round of the playoffs yet. James was in the NBA Finals in year 4 at age 22. He was averaging 30 a game at age 21. And he had been in the NBA Finals. And he goes for 29 in a second half against the Eastern Conference, in the Eastern Conference Championship against Detroit. And you would think that that was the aha moment for Cleveland. Like, okay, we got our guy. This is who we're going to build it around. Instead, they were putting guys around him, ragtag crews, and expecting him to go figure it out. And he was doing that. Then comes 2010. All he did was level the playing field. That's all he did. He didn't go to a super team and decide that, no, the crews that you're putting me around, I got to deal with Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce,
Dwight,
Rondo, Ray Allen. I got to deal with these, and I got to go against these guys with the crews that you're giving me. Because again, we're talking about in the 80s where you telling me that I got to win, but this is what you're giving me. The fans are telling me that I have to win, but this is what they're giving me in order to win. All James did was level the playing field. Now, he didn't know how to win until he got with Dwayne. And Dwayne told him, you got to be the guy. So it's basically me coming into your house, and I'm tiptoeing into your house, and then you telling me, hey, take your shoes off, put your feet up on the couch, and stop acting like that. You're the man here. I'm going to take a backseat to you. And we saw what he turned into after that and what he continued to be. I have never seen an athlete in my life do what James did. That's why I think he's the best basketball player, the most complete basketball player that I've ever seen.
Question. Because your monologue was very impressive. Before
beautifully said. Beautifully said.
It really was. Before I ask my question, I just want to give a quick shout out to D Wade because, like you said, teaching LeBron how to win. His first 3 years was just as impressive as LeBron. Year 1 didn't make the playoffs. Year 2 went to the Eastern Conference Finals. A lot of people don't know that. Played Detroit, lost in 7, I believe. Year 3 Finals. So I think D Wade was putting up astonishing numbers. He was dominant.
Yeah, Shaq, though, don't leave that out.
No, yeah. Shaq did the same thing that D Wade did to LeBron. He told him that this is your team, and I'm gonna ride on your bus. Which goes to my question: you don't think having a guy in D Wade, teaching? I wouldn't say teaching LeBron how to win. And I don't think we can say MJ ever had a person who taught him how to win championships. He kind of just had to figure it out in game. You don't think that plays a factor into his development?
That's debatable.
Well, first and foremost, the question that you just asked, who do you think Phil Jackson was?
I couldn't have 100% what I was going to
say. You think that Jordan was figuring it out?
100%.
No,
I mean, I'm talking about just from a player aspect. Because you could say Wade, but you could say Wade, but Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra was there in Miami with LeBron and D Wade.
That's correct.
So that's a player, a GM who's a big time winner,
a rookie head coach in Eric Spoelstra. Okay. Pat Riley, of course, that's a legendary coach. And then
D Wade, who's already a legendary player.
But was MJ a winner with Doug Collins?
He was all right.
He was on record saying there's no iron team, but there's an iron win. And that's what he did. He went in with the mentality, I'm going to have the ball, I'm going to score the basketball, this is how we'll win. He couldn't do it that way. He figured out once Phil came in, this is a team sport. Started running the triangle offense, started realizing, you know what? I can't win if I don't trust my guys. Starts facilitating the basketball a little bit more. We saw Paxton clutch up, hit a game winner. We saw Steve Kerr hit a game winner for him. He had help, 100%. How he mentioned more than enough times, this guy, LeBron, had no help for years.
They had the same amount.
That is very wrong.
I'm talking about pre-Scotty. We just talked about it. He didn't have help.
Do you think LeBron would have been able to stay in Cleveland his entire career?
No.
And be as successful as he was in this point in time.
Different time eras, but I think LeBron had to leave to get that success because Cleveland wasn't the market and Cleveland wasn't going to have another guy come in. But I think MJ being in his time, he didn't have help. Just like they kind of had the same. He didn't have help, just like LeBron in his first couple seasons. It wasn't until they made some right acquisitions in the draft. Scottie Pippen gets better, not like he gets to All-NBA, All-Star level better, which was in 90, I believe, or 91.
90, correct.
And then they start to bring those pieces in, and then they start to win. Same with LeBron. He goes to play with D-Wade and Bosh, and then they become that team. But I'm saying, you guys are saying LeBron D-Wade taught him. MJ, he did have Phil Jackson, who was a champion with New York, but I don't think he was a winning coach. He still brought in something different. The triangle wasn't really seen, and it was a different mindset. D-Wade knew how to win. He was already considered a winner. Granted, he was losing after he won the finals, but he didn't already came back from 0-2. He didn't already dominate in the playoffs. He didn't already dominate that Detroit Pistons team that we love to grade LeBron about. D-Wade dominated them too. He gave Rip Hamilton fits. He didn't beat Dallas already.
But lost.
He did lose.
LeBron beat him with no one.
LeBron did not beat them.
The Pistons, yes, he did. Thank you.
He did beat him.
When he scored the last 25 points.
But I'm saying D-Wade already was a winner. So he already injected that winning mentality.
How much was that, OG?
29.
29.
He didn't already injected that winning mentality. MJ didn't have a player to inject that winning mentality, and he had a coach that was bringing something new.
Well, I think you're missing the point, my man. And the point is that unit from the beginning was built around Jordan. So he grew with those guys. It wasn't a guy who was teaching him how to win. They were all teaching each other how to win. Jordan eventually bought into the system, and he recognized that if I'm going to win, I got to trust these guys that I've been with for years. I don't need to have another guy come in here and show me how to win. I have the ingredients right here because we've been doing this for years. Now it's just up to me to trust these guys, trust the system that I'm in, which he did, which is why they ended up winning, because he could have continued to keep doing it his way. And you know who he would have been? A better version of Vince Carter.
Vince Carter's a stretch. I think he would have got at least one.
With the mentality that he had?
You don't think he couldn't get one of those?
All Jordan was saying was, I'm the guy. And we're telling you that you can be the guy, but you got to get on our page and you got to trust us. We're here with you.
Agreed.
He wasn't buying into that for years, even though they were building that unit around him. Why do you think he was averaging 37 and 35 a game? Because he wasn't buying into it. And then Phil shows up and, get with these guys and trust these guys. Jordan's best seasons was when he got into the triangle.
Debatable.
Those was his best years. Even
it's
though
not debatable.
He had
it was debatable.
Because if you don't win a championship, it's not a success.
His 88-89 season was ridiculous.
I personally thought that he should have won the league MVP that year. That's just my opinion. But he became a much better player when he got into the triangle.
I get what you're saying, because he initiated his playmaking and he became a better rebounder.
And you just get to a point where you're on cruise control to a point with that kind of system where you know what, you know where you're supposed to be, you know what you're supposed to do. And when you're Michael Jordan, you're able to do the things you're able to do. A system like that is just perfectly catered to him. And the fact that he was able to really adapt to that offense and really fully commit to it. But a point I want to make is I think of the Miami Heat as LeBron's time in college. You know what I'm trying to say there? Where he needed to go to Miami to really learn how to win. And that's 100% fact. But then if he didn't win a championship after leaving Miami, then I would understand. No way you can even consider putting him in the GOAT conversation. So what does he do? Goes back home, goes to Cleveland, where they have had a 55-year drought of not winning a championship, one of the worst droughts in sports history. Goes to Cleveland, where they've been known historically for being a city of losers.
Right.
Comes in, has the first 3-1 comeback in finals history, does it averaging in the last 3 games over 40 points, has probably the greatest defensive play of all time, and this is against the greatest team in regular season history.
Right.
And then on top of that, he leaves and goes to another franchise and wins another championship. Becoming the first player ever to have 3 finals MVPs with 3 different teams. And the fact that he's able to be this all-around player where if he was a score-first guy, he would put up the scoring numbers that Michael was putting up. But the fact that he's a facilitator, he's averaging 28, 7, and 7 his entire career. If he wasn't the facilitator, he'd probably be averaging 30 to 35 points every single season. There's no doubt in my mind.
Well, because when it comes to MJ and LeBron, realistically, their numbers are kind of, if you really look at them from the overall standpoint, they're identical. Like you said, LeBron was 27, 8, and 8. I think MJ is about 36 and 5. So their numbers are identical. You look at, like you said, LeBron in the championships coming back from 3-1. MJ, he did his things in 91, dominated the Lakers. He saw Portland, he dominated them. Phoenix, he put up 40 a game. I think he averaged 41, 11, and 8, I believe. He just completely dominated them, showed off his playmaking. Same 96, they just ran the table, beat Supersonics. So I think with these two guys, it just comes. Obviously, LeBron does what he does, and he's a special player. He's the greatest all-around player of all time. I would never take that away from him.
That's not a debate. Yep.
But when you're talking about greatest of all time, I think you have to look at obviously what they accomplished in their era, how they dominated in their era, and I just think with Michael Jordan, he was just so much dominant in his era in the statistical numbers, in winning, in the eye test. I'm not obviously he was a loser in the beginning, but him, winning MVP and Defensive Player of the Year in the same year as a two guard in a big man era, which normally we even look at now, Defensive Player of the Year goes to big men. So it's like winning that as a two guard plus winning the MVP, leading the league in scoring and leading the league in steals. I think stuff like that, leading the league in scoring 10 times. I think his two-way finesse, you can go either way, but I think it's just his two-way finesse was so dominant as a player. It's hard for me to say, I would have. I think they're both 1 and 2 all time. I think MJ is 1, LeBron is 2. But I think MJ's just two-way dominance was just so above. I have to have him 1.
Just so you know, LeBron in his career, which is interesting, never scored 27, 7, and 8 one time.
Really?
Even though he averaged 27, 7, and 8 for his career, he never scored 27, 7, and 8.
You mean specifically
those numbers?
Because what
I
he
didn't
means
even know
is,
that.
Oh, wow, that's crazy.
All he's saying is he exceeded those.
I agree.
Either he did one.
I think LeBron definitely exceeded the expectations by a
not just even
mile.
the numbers itself, because the expectation that's a known fact.
I agree.
Because they had the expectation of being Michael off in high school. He was supposed to be Michael. Of course, he didn't even go to college. Becomes the first overall pick. And somehow manages through all of this to exceed the expectation that was already unachievable, and he found a way to exceed expectation, which just is unbelievable. Truthfully,
he's LeBron definitely exceeded the expectation. It's hard because I feel like these two are the most polarizing superstars in NBA history. Having phenomenal career, but I don't like to throw the 6-0 rings. So I feel like that's, whatever, they both have championships. So that I don't even bring that up. But MJ being a 5-time MVP, winning, being a defensive player there, being all NBA for so long, leading the league in scoring, him being that dominant, LeBron being that dominant for a long time. LeBron's going to have the longevity over him. But I think, you go peak for peak, MJ's peak being, I guess, 88 to 93 and then 96 to 98. He was really legit individually the most dominant player and what OG has probably ever seen in that time period. He was just that dominant as a two guard in a big man era. Coming into the draft, people were building around bigs. Hakeem went number 1, I believe, in that draft. People were building around bigs. It wasn't a guard era, and Michael Jordan completely changed the trajectory of that whole era. So I think that was just an amazing thing.
last thing I'll say, because I know I've been saying a lot, OG, and if you want to make a point after, you're more than welcome, of course.
Sure, man.
But if they had the mentality that LeBron started, you know what, this organization is not going to help me put a squad together around me. I'm gonna do it myself. If they had that mentality in the 90s, you think Jordan goes 6-0 still?
What you mean?
If
They form super teams.
If they were tired of
Players
losing to
form super
Jordan,
teams.
if they were tired of losing to Jordan, you know what? Hey guys, let's go team up. Let's go to Utah. Hey guys, let's go to Phoenix.
Yeah, I don't think nobody's going to Utah.
100. Listen, I'm with you there. I'm with you there. But the fact they still had a all-time great championship roster that didn't end up getting it done. But think about it. KD joined a 73-win team to slay LeBron.
Did he though?
No doubt
Yes, he
about
did.
it. No
Yes,
doubt
he did.
about it. He
Okay,
said
but
with
you-
that
okay,
move,
okay,
he
okay.
thought people would say he's the solidified number 1 player, and was surprised that even after he got LeBron, that people still saw LeBron as the GOAT.
Okay, well, first of all,
The logic was real simple. We can't beat him without you, and you can't beat him without us.
Perfectly
okay,
said.
well, first of all, player empowerment is a different time period. And back in the 90s
Correct.
and 80s, they were signing like 9-10-year deals. So it's hard to really say what
Good
can
point.
happen. But, I agree, like KD obviously messed up a lot of LeBron's rings. And, it happens. But, he's blundered. And 2011 is on his mind. He lost that. So
I
let's
can't
not
argue against 2011.
Yes, KD did join and he did lose those finals, but let's not he has lost in the finals before. And if teams would have done that in the 90s, I can't say if MJ would have won. MJ had his own super team because he was just that great, and Scottie ascended to that level.
Correct.
And then they got Dennis Rodman, who was a defensive machine. But I don't think, I don't know. I can't honestly say what happened because even the teams he played, the Phoenix Suns, that was one of the best Phoenix Suns teams of all time. They were a 60-win team. Portland, that was a juggernaut offense. They were, if I'm not mistaken, a 60-win team.
They just didn't match up well against the Bulls.
It was MJ. Magic was still on his last leg, but you got Utah was one of those the best teams. Seattle, that was one of the best Seattle Supersonic teams. Those were 60-win teams. They had GP and Kemp, so he still played dominant teams in his era. But yeah, the KD thing just messed it. I don't think that would happen because the '90s was just completely different.
Okay.
So, OG, do you want to make a final point? Because I know Drew asked if you wanted to add something to it if you wanted to.
I think we're good, man.
We covered
it all. This was great, man.
All right,
this was awesome.
This was episode 98 of the podcast. We had a special guest, OG. Just want to thank you once again for being on the show, man. Riv. If you remember what the clap sound is, you can hit the clap. I think it's the light blue one. Try the light blue one. Okay. Okay.
There we go.
So thank you, OG, for coming on the show. We appreciate it.
Producer extraordinaire, my man. Right here.
So we wish you the best luck in whatever you're doing, man. So for everybody listening, you can follow him on TikTok at Chltwn32. It's CHLTWN32. And he has a YouTube, Chltown Hoops, as well. I watch your game recaps and your live streams. Best luck to you in that. So thank you for being on the show once again. This was awesome.
Thanks for having me, guys. It was awesome. Appreciate
Have a good night, OG.
All right, so this is the episode 98. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.